Welcome back to Myth Vision. I am joined by Apostate Aladdin. How you doing?
Hey, Derek. I'm great. Also, my cat behind the scenes, he's right here. Just wanted everyone to know that. If things
Well,
start falling, that's his fault.
we're in good company. By the way, I just noticed this. We've been talking behind the scenes. Your audio is just a little low. I don't know if that's easy to bump up a smidge,
Sure.
just in
Yeah.
case. I
Audience,
think it might
please
be
let us
important.
know.
Yeah, let
Yeah.
us know. Is Apostate's Aladdin's audio significantly lower than mine, or
Is this better
please?
now? I turned it up a bit. Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good
Excellent.
to me, but I'd like to hear their opinion. Good to see everybody in the chat. I need to pull up a channel, man. We've been talking behind the scenes, but I'm like, how am I not shamelessly plugging you already? You know me, I love to promote people's channels.
Appreciate
And
it.
yeah, of course, of course. So
For those of
it's
you who
been a
don't know
minute.
me, I'll just
Yeah.
tell people my name is Apostate Aladdin. I am an ex-Muslim and I have a YouTube channel where I talk about all sorts of topics related to religion. So, yeah, pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Derek.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me show everybody here. We have his YouTube channel.
Yes,
What is your
please.
channel about? What is your goals? Can you tell us a little bit? Maybe get some people interested in subscribing and checking you out.
Sure. Yeah, I started off when I myself was, I suppose, at the end of the process of questioning my own faith as a Muslim. And now it's more about helping those who are questioning their faith and helping those who believe religion understand our perspective as well as skeptics, as ex believers, and sometimes communicating with them. So I host live streams similar to yours where I take callers. But it's very nice to be able to do this on your channel because I'm sure you have a lot of people in your audience who would love to discuss some of these topics in depth, and I'm happy to help here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Audio seems fine according to
Excellent.
people who are online. So, you get questions like, "What made you question Islam?" and things like that. I'm sure you could cover some of that, and you probably have. Do you have videos on your channel that actually explain this?
Oh, absolutely. Just browse through the videos. Most of the topics pertain to things that I've thought through or things that affected me personally as well. Things that were of interest. So feel free to scroll through and you'll find all sorts of topics that will answer your questions.
Wow. Yeah, you do a lot of different topics. You also have some
Yeah.
interesting cartoons. Look, I miss Sharif. Is it Gaber or Gaber?
Yeah, Sharif Gabir.
I heard he got arrested.
I haven't kept up with the latest news because it's usually not great, but I hope he's at least at least able to have a path to the future now. Because for a long time he was in hiding because he was
Yeah.
being persecuted for his free speech and criticism of religion, which you
Mm.
should check out his channel too at some point. But yeah, no, enough plugging me. I'm not here to
Yeah. Of
get people
course,
to subscribe. I just want to join
I
you
am.
in discussing today. So
I am.
what
I'm a shameless plug, man.
what is it that we're going to be talking about today, and who are we
Yeah.
expecting to call in or asking to call in?
I'm hoping that we have some Muslims who believe, they're confident that the Quran is the word of God. And they think they have proof. They can prove that the Quran is the word of God. I know that's a high standard. Maybe the word is a bit too, you know, uh, demanding, but I think you and I would agree, and we can lay out our cards up front that we think, like all religions, they're human, they're man made, and maybe humans have had experiences and attributed that to the divine or whatnot. But at the end of the day, you and I probably would say the Quran is a human document, nothing more than a human document. It's not divine. It is not the perfect word of God. Just like I've come from my Christian background, believing that the Bible is the perfect word of God, it's inerrant, it's infallible, these kind of ideas. You and I would probably be on the same page, I imagine.
Yeah. And to spell it out more explicitly for people, I don't think we can prove one way or the other. Can you prove that the Quran was written by the prophet alone or the prophet and a bunch of people? No, you can't prove anything definitively. But I have no reason to, and I don't think there is a good enough reason to believed that it wasn't human made, like every other religious text that we know of. So that is my position.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. And by the way, I pinned for Muslims who want to call in, I'm hoping someone would take the time to share this with other Muslims. Oh, someone actually recommended your channel to me, Hassan Radwan, earlier in my Discord. I just was barely doing a check through on YouTube, and I thought it said your videos were like 5 years old or something. So I didn't know if you were still active. And I was like, I'm looking to talk to ex-Muslims who share a common ground with me that aren't apologists for another faith, if I can help it, to address these kind of conversations with real Muslims who may call in, but also even getting their stories. Because I like to touch Islam. Not many people who were growing up critiquing ex-Christian, whatever their faith may be, like to touch Islam, but I do.
You
And
like to touch Islam. That's the
I
quote
do
that
like
we're
to.
taking from. Okay.
Please clip it. But if I may, I need to give a little bit of heart here. Okay. Some people are ruthless toward Islam, and I get it. There's been a lot of harm that's been done by religion in general in the world, and I get that. But I read, if you will, a book. I'm pulling it up here on my library years ago. And I think this is necessary to kind of what interested me in Islam was listening to this book. Scrolling down. Bear with me. Apologies if I'm quiet for just a second while I'm looking.
I can ramble for a second if you'd like.
Go ahead. Yeah, if you don't mind.
Bam. You said we don't want to be ruthless against Islam. I'll modify that a bit. I think we can be ruthless against, or like not bow down when we're criticizing religion, but it's important to keep in mind what is the goal and how do we achieve that goal. So, for example, focusing on obscure texts in, or interpretations of the religion that aren't really acknowledged or practiced and trying to use that against believers, I don't think that's very productive. But meeting
Right.
people where they're at, asking them what they believe and how they reconcile their beliefs with reality and so on, I find that a lot more productive. So I don't hold back when criticizing religion, but I try to have a more mindful approach of what it is that we're trying to achieve, in that confrontation. That's my view.
I agree. I want to be as critical as possible without
Yeah.
being hateful of an individual necessarily, because I know that we wrap our identities to these beliefs, and they need to be criticized. The religion itself, the claims themselves need to be critically analyzed. And when I say criticized, that's what I mean, because I know that term can get used out of hand. But I can't find the book. It's 2 books written by the same author, and it's something to do with like it's pretty much the early life of Muhammad, and it really intrigued me to hear it from a perspective that a Muslim would likely understand it through the traditional kind of lens. Just like Christians might identify like the cross and say it's beautiful, he laid down his life for me. Skeptics from the outside look at it and go, a human sacrifice as an atonement, blood atonement. Like you can look at this through 2 lenses, and I feel like that's what a lot of times happens. You know what I mean? I pinned it in the chat. So let's hope, fingers crossed, we can get somebody to come in here. Hassan didn't respond.
No, I wouldn't think that Hassan Aldwan would show up in a live stream. He's been mostly retired for a while now, but he does check in, on the community, and we appreciate him for that. But yeah, he was his videos were some of the videos that I watched back when I needed help and I was struggling with my faith, and I liked that he just went straight to the point, criticized or brought attention to things that were problematic or nonsensical or illogical in the religion without the scare tactics, without the smearing, without all the loaded language that a lot of people use. And that was the best help that I needed at the time. So that's part of what I modeled my approach towards.
Absolutely. I actually, it's kind of funny. Someone commented God Logic. You know who God Logic is, right?
Escapes my mind who they are. Are they like a Christian channel that is, does apologetics? Yeah.
Yeah, but they do like purely engagement with Muslims mostly, and sometimes
Mm,
Hebrew Israelites, but they they've been popularized by debating many of these Muslim apologists. And
mhm,
Secular Spirit in the House, we'll be seeing him soon on the channel. But my buddy who went to this Christian conference, if you will, in California, was outside, and there's lines waiting to meet these people. The Christians who are fans of these people are lined up. And I guess he was walking outside, and he's on the like live, like with me on Messenger. And then God Logic walks by, and I'm like, and he's like, hey, have you met Myth Vision? And I'm like, I know you, you know me. Now, some of his work I do enjoy. I can learn from hearing what they're saying as it relates to engaging polemically with Christianity. I do learn from some of this stuff, but what I like more is critical scholarship. You know me. I like to study the experts in like early Islam, early Quranic material, and hearing them is, more enjoyable to me. I like it better at least. Um, and I hope and encourage people to understand it better for two reasons. We can be critical, but I think there is a fear. I really think a lot of people don't know or have enough Muslim friends, and it creates an us versus them that we could do some work to improve. I don't know if you feel you agree with me on that.
I agree. It's important to hear and not misrepresent what people who you disagree with say and think. So to
Mhm.
engage in it with, in good faith, with honesty is important, and that involves sometimes, actually listening to it and dissecting it, which is something that I like to do. Um, yeah, I am
Absolutely.
curious because it seems like we have a caller in the background. However,
Yeah.
I did see a flicker of something. Um, so yeah, I'll let you deal with the vetting in the background while I
Okay.
keep vamping, I suppose.
Real quick, inquisitive mind. Thank you for the super chat. If the Quran is from God, then I'm the Tooth Fairy's accountant, Batman's driving instructor, Hulk's anger management coach, and the Pope's personal barber. Thank you so much for the super chat. Ghost of Myth Vision here in the house today. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, hey, background, our we have someone in the queue. Prophet Daniel, can you wave to me, my friend, just so that we know your real count? Cool. Okay, cool. I feel comfortable. Let's bring our friend on. Sounds good.
Sure.
All right, here we go. Hey, how's it going?
Hey Derek, how are you? It's been a long
Good.
time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so welcome.
I
Have you been on before? I think you have, right?
Yes, I have. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I think we had a debate with the guy called from Australia. I don't know his name, but we had a debate on the Quran and science on your channel.
Okay, it's been a minute. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a while now. It's been 3 years now, I suppose. And
It's
we we didn't continue talking to each other for whatever reason. I think you got bugged up with my emails, I suppose. Um,
probably. I mean, I'm busy. I'm busy.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. I mean, look, I love you and I admire your work. All right.
thank you.
And I basically love your energy and the kind
Thank
of
you.
people that you talk to. And, but my only complaint with you is
Here it
as
comes.
I
No.
but the thing is, I don't know. We all need to do a better job at engaging each other, and that's all I had to say.
Yeah, I
I
could
face the
take
same
that.
problem, same issue with the Christians. Like God Logic, for example, he would not want to talk to me, and the same applies to the Muslims as well. I mean, the Muslims don't want to talk to me, so it's not a problem that I have with one particular group of people, but my friends out here in Australia who are atheists, they're fantastic people. I mean, I talk to them all the time, and we are friends. And in fact, my books have been the outcomes of all those discussions and discourses that I've had over the years. My only friend in Australia is an atheist. Can you believe that? And
I believe
so,
it. Look, I've talked to you before, and you're very friendly. Which I appreciate, and I hope that we carry that kind of demeanor as well. We might challenge. That's normal. I'm sure you and your friend have challenging conversations, but remain friends. So I want to, if we could get to the topic. I mean, you're here, my friend. You're on the platform. What do you think about a topic like that? Prove the Quran is from God.
yeah, there's multi-layered evidence in the Quran. So some of my books that I've already had a discussion on your channel as well are based on abyssal thinking, abyssal epistemology. Basically, the Quran starts off saying, point out a contradiction in the Quran. That in chapter 2, verse number 2, I suppose it is. It says, "La rayba fihi." There is no doubts in it. In this narration, there is no contradictions in it. So if there is one, point it out. So the Quran has this abyssal line of thinking where it encourages the readers to point out errors in it. And I'm sure over the years, people have pointed out just several different things. One of the things that we also discussed on your channel last time was the sun setting. And I did talk to you about how language plays a part in it, and how the narration sort of communicates what was really going on. So things like that are very trivial. Like, I don't know why people don't really catch those things as trivial, and they treat certain phraseology as being ignoring the language that they use themselves. They treat it at a different level. So things of this nature are the only sort of hindrance for them learning the Quran. Otherwise, I have written books on science based off of the Quran. And I don't know if you had time to read the book
Wait,
at
I'm
all
curious
that I
about
told you
that.
that I've written on science.
Prophet Daniel, can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit more? What is a book about science in the Quran about? Like, are you talking about science in the Quran, or how the Quran does not have science in it? I'm kind of confused about your religious beliefs.
Okay, I'm talking about how the Quran comes to describe natural wonders, like natural facts, the natural world, basically. So the Quran talks about this concept of 7 layers of the sky that the planet has around it. And just for the fact that going back 1400 years, even up until recently, some of them who have read my book, they have told me, oh, we never thought planet Earth to be having these different sky layers. But such information, when found in the Quran 1400 years ago, should tell your nerves that there is something. At least there is a claim about something. So when you investigate into the claim is when you find out.
If I may, Daniel, I know that in ancient Rome and ancient Greece, they definitely had 7 layers of heaven in some cosmologies. But when they say heaven, they're not talking about like stratosphere, the next sphere, like within our actual heaven that modern scientists are talking about, but they're talking about 7 layers of heaven. So how could we determine the Quran is actually talking about 7 layers of the sky itself and not talking about 7 layers of heaven, which was already a known fact according to ancient Greek and Roman ideas of cosmology? But they weren't talking about the modern scientific sense of, there's like the stratosphere and then the next sphere above that, all the way till you get to outer space. And I'm just curious to know how you can distinguish between that language and our modern scientific cosmology, if that makes sense.
I get your point. It's a very good point. So, but the Quran not just mentions 7 layers, but it also describes them. That's the bit. So when we get into the description, the Quran talks about the layer of the sky from which rain pours down, the layer that is providing protection against the harmful radiation of the sun, the layer
The Quran doesn't really talk about any of that, as far as I know. Not a layer that protects. Like, where is the reference for the Quran mentioning a layer of the sky that protects from the radiation?
Oh, okay. We will go through. We'll go through those things right now. Okay.
I'd be curious to
So
examine one example, because most of these examples would be, scientific discoveries, and then people go digging through the text to say, well, the Quran also mentioned something that sounds right. But it's not like someone reading the Quran discovered something about the real world because of what they read.
no, I'm not saying scientists who are making discoveries are necessarily going to the Quran and then trying to invent things or discover things. I'm not making that claim. What I'm saying is the Quran does talk about these natural wonders,
But
and
these, when the
because
Quran
of our
talks about,
advancement,
like,
sorry,
when the Quran talks about things like, for example, the sky being held up by pillars, invisible pillars, right? Muslims say that that is metaphorical, right? But
no, the
but back
Quran does
back
not talk
then,
about it. No, the Quran does not talk about sky being held up with pillars. In fact, it says
it
the
does.
sky isn't held up with pillars. It says the opposite.
Perhaps I'm misremembering,
The
but
Bible says that. The Bible says it's
yeah,
held up with pillars.
It definitely
I
does in the
will look
Bible.
into
I
that.
don't. Yeah, it definitely
Not in the
has
Quran.
that flat Earth cosmology is biblical. And you could understand why. I mean, the entire ancient world thought that, apart from a few Greeks who came across this idea, and then eventually later. So they're saying, so Surah 13:12, Allah is the one who raised the heavens without pillars that you can see. And then Surah
Yeah,
31:10, he created the heavens
without.
without pillars that you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
So it is
that.
mentioning invisible pillars, but even if you look at the example of like
It's
shooting
not
stars,
invisible
right?
pillars, brother. It says without pillars. بغير amadin. بغير amadin is there is no pillars. It's
ترونها.
not saying
Yeah.
it's invisible.
You can
Sure.
see.
If you ignore that one, but the Quran talks about God using, shooting stars, which are like comets and asteroids and stuff, as like missiles against the devils who, listen to the communication between God and the angels. But then we discovered, meteor showers and why they happen, and we can predict them in advance. So it invalidates the view that's written in the Quran.
No,
Would
it does
that
not. It
prove
does
to
not
you?
invalidate it. It only points at the routine inspection that the angels are doing in the cosmos, in the celestial space.
So
So
do you
jinns.
think
The
that
Quran
meteor
talks about
showers are
jinn.
like missiles from God that
The
are
the
hitting jinn?
Quran. Yeah, the Quran talks about jinns having ventured into the celestial space in the 14th century. It already talks about jinns having gone into the Lagrangian points where they sit around the celestial bodies and they try to peer into the communications. I mean, even we are tapping into these sort of communications and realizing some weird frequencies that go on into the celestial space and the cosmos. So even we try to sort of pick up on signals that are pretty weird, out of the ordinary. So the jinns have been doing this for
Are
quite
you
some
saying
time,
like
and
the
God talked
wow
about it in the
signal
14th
is a
century.
communication from God? Is that what you're implying? That like things
The
like that wow
angels,
signal?
the
Yeah.
angels basically, it's the world, our planet Earth is being managed by angels, and it's called angelology. So when angels are doing stuff, they are communicating to each other. Okay.
So
And
what
the
is
jinn
something that
kind,
convinces you that the world is managed by angels, aside from it being mentioned
well,
in the Quran?
that's what is being told in the Quran, though,
Aside
and
from
even in the
that,
Bible.
do you see anything
Even
in
in
the
the
world
Bible,
that signifies or proves that it is managed by angels?
angels don't belong to the material dimension, and we kind of measure things up in material dimension. And so far, we haven't even measured up jinns who also belong to the material dimension. Jinns are made out of the plasma, so we should be able to. I mean, although plasma is unseen, but it's certainly detectable. And I think we have to. I think in the near
Wait, is it
future,
is it detectable or not? Because it gives me
in a way,
give me
we
the
have
same vibes of
identified
like,
the plasma layers around the sky. I don't know
but
how
have
much.
you watched those like ghost sort of exploration shows where they have someone with some kind of meter reading some signals or waves, and they say that that is the presence of spirits or ghosts? This sounds similar,
Well,
where like you're saying
you
they
see,
don't exist
no,
in this
no,
realm, but
no.
they do.
No, look, what I would say here is this. Recently, Obama had a show where he sort of conceded that we have aliens. We do, it's confirmed that we have aliens, but he said they are just not in the area B53. So Obama even alluded to the fact that human intelligence has picked up on alien activity, and those aliens
So
are
do you
jinns.
classify those are okay? So you think those aliens are jinns? So they are in this
Yeah,
world. So we
yeah,
can measure them.
yeah. Of
By the
course,
way,
we should be able.
if I may, and I don't mean to jab, I think this is important to bring back. I was just looking up a few things about this pillar thing, and
Yeah,
Aladdin is spot on according to Al-Tabari and Ibn Kathar, um, or Kathir, if that's how you pronounce
Ibn
his name.
Kathir and At-Tabari, yes.
yeah.
Kathir, yeah. So according to Surah 31:10, I read, he created the heavens without pillars that you can see, right? So the critical issue is the Arabic phrase that you can see, tarwanaya, naha. I'm not sure how to say it.
Tarawna, yeah.
Yeah, it creates an ambiguity that scholars have long noted. It can be read two ways, either without any pillars, as Daniel's trying to say, as you could see, right? No pillars at all, some would argue, or without pillars that you can see. There are pillars, but they are invisible. Classical Muslim commentators like Al-Tabari and Ibn Kathir actually debated this, and many of them went with the invisible pillar interpretation, meaning they understood the Quran to be saying the sky is a physical structure held up by the invisible supports. And then Surah 2265 reinforces this. He withholds the sky from falling on the earth except by his permission. This only makes sense if the sky is conceived as a solid object with mass that could physically fall. Also, Surah 2132, we made the sky a protected ceiling. The word saki, S-A-Q-I, F, yeah, there's an F there, literally means roof or ceiling, treating the sky as a solid constructed canopy. But ultimately, and there's another one it gives, but this is straight out of ancient Near Eastern cosmology. The Hebrew Bible has the same picture. Job 26:11 says, the pillars of heaven tremble, and the Genesis 1 Rakia firmament is a solid dome. Babylonian cosmology had the sky as a solid vault resting on the mountains at the edge of the earth. Egyptian cosmology had the sky goddess Nut held up by Shu. The Quran is working within the same pre-scientific framework where the sky is a physical structure that needs to be supported or actively prevented from collapsing. So your interpretation, Daniel, would have to be true, not either or, but like it has to be true for you to make this a scientific miracle in the Quran, or at least, I don't want to use the word miracle, but like it's knowledge of science that only gets vindicated when we actually go to space and recognize, okay, we now know this about the sky. Whereas it seems like ancient, pretty solid commentators in Islamic tradition argued that, yeah, it's just pillars we don't see with our eyes, but they're holding up the sky. So look, I guess you could toss a coin, but I don't think it validates proof that the Quran is from God. And anyway, I might have derailed you there. Both you guys were going down a tangent about aliens and Obama, but I think it's important to point out, like, a lot of people question this is ancient Near Eastern cosmology.
Look, what I will say is this. I mean, not just cosmology. All of the ancient traditions talk about, for example, the flood of Noah, right? So you talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh. Also, something that you have not talked about is even in the Indian Vedic philosophy, you do have avatars. For example, Matsya, which is a fish avatar, actually rescues humanity from the flood. So from the flood of Manu, in fact, Manu in Vedic philosophy is a direct reference to Noah, okay? Because we have something called as Manu Smriti, which is the law book of Manu, which is the law book of Noah, for example. So how come all these different ancient traditions have the same things to talk about? How? Because we do realize human beings were one nascent society when they started off.
Can I offer
And when
an
Noah
alternative
thing happened,
answer?
when Noah's event
You asked the
happened,
question and then answered it. You said, how could this happen? And then you gave one answer as if that's the only possible way it could have happened. Are you open to hearing other explanations?
there could be many other explanations. I'm open to listening to them. But since I've heard a lot of the talk that you guys make, I'm giving you one of the reasons what I think is a probable case. Human beings were one society, and after Noah's flood, when they differentiated into many different societies and ethnic groups, they carried those radical stories, okay, and depicted them in their literature in their own way. So that's what happened. And if these cultures are talking about seven heavens, No wonder why they would talk about it. Okay, but in the Quran we have the details of these layers, and that's the
But
difference.
these layers don't correspond to like a real, tangible division of 7 layers of heaven.
Now,
Like
I
in
will help
Islam,
you.
for
I will help you
example,
learn that.
like you
I
don't
will
need to
help you
help me
learn
learn
that
them.
if you want.
Like in Islam, for example, when God says that He descends to the lowest heaven in the last third of the night, clearly not understanding that it's the last third of the night somewhere on the planet, because it's a globe. But like the lowest heaven, we're not supposed to be able to go through that without getting through the gates of heavens, not the Jannah heaven, but the keepers of these heavens. But clearly humans have pierced through the atmosphere and way beyond. So how could there be 7 heavens if we're already past the first heaven as described by Islam?
Look, what you're doing is conflating the secondary sources in Islam with the Quran, not realizing that these sources of information have come about like 200 years later on, and mostly
I'm
in
well aware of
Iraq
that.
region. And
I
in
am. I am
Iraq,
by
what
Mikha'il,
had
I know.
happened in Iraq is Christians who converted into Islam overnight because of the armies invading into those regions and defeating the Sassanians and the Romans. These Christians who lived in those regions got Islam just like that as a gift. So when they learned the Quran, they went like, oh, we already know these stories, and they dished out or distilled their bias and earlier learnings into what we call the books of Hadith. So the books of Hadith are not an explanation of the Holy Quran. They're not.
I'm going to
Well,
So
change
how
our
people
do you?
layout real
conflate.
quick, if
Sure.
that's okay with you guys.
If not for hadith, I'm not someone who believes that, even when I was a Muslim, I knew the hadiths were not written by the Prophet himself or, the word of God or anything of the sort. But without the hadith, Sunni Islam at least, or most interpretations of Islam, you can't make sense of the Quran by itself without the hadith. So if we
I would
dismiss that,
disagree. I have written these books without any reference to the secondary sources or hadiths. I
so
am a Sunni. I
how do you
believe in the
interpret
Sunni.
a
I
verse
believe in the
if
Sunni
not?
political thought. I'm a
So you
Sunni.
wrote books, but like, what's your source for this information? Like, you
The
read
Quran
something
is
in
the
Arabic in
source
the Quran. So how do you know what God meant by something that is not explicitly said in the Quran?
because the Quran says it's a clear book. It explains. ثم It says ثم نفصل من لدنه. I am the one who's explaining it. The Quran says. So the explanations are in the Quran itself. If you
But
read my
there are many
book, you will know
instances where
what
like
I mean.
stories start without context and you don't know what this is about, and like God is referencing other stories that aren't in the Quran. How do you find the explanation for those in the Quran?
Oh, they're actually beautiful. The way it all works out is beautiful, basically, I should say. I mean, look,
There is a good question someone asked Daniel from the chat. There's a couple
sure.
comments. One of them was from a good friend of mine, Doc Pluromana, real sharp. He had a really good critique. I think it's a good critique where he pointed out that if you're taking the modern scientific cosmology understanding of this is what the Quran's saying, the original audience weren't getting it. We only figured it out now. So within the last 150, 200 years, people who were hearing the Quran never really understood what this was saying back then. They did not have the knowledge that we do today. It's almost like saying in 500 years from now, we're going to discover something scientifically. And well, wouldn't you know, this book from, 700 AD, it had the answer all along, and it's just going to keep getting verified through the modern, latest, greatest scientific thing. That means that the revelation was never meant to be understood for those people back then. They did not get it. They never were able to comprehend what its full meaning really was. And that's kind of problematic, I think, if they're supposed to understand the meaning and message and actually get what this book is trying to tell them, but they don't have any way to prove or validate, vindicate, which we have now, based on your interpretation of it, is my point. By the way, you're Quran only, right?
Yeah.
You're Quran onlyist. You're not.
Yeah.
You just take the Quran.
Look, my
You're a
position on
heretic,
that
dude.
no.
I love it though. No, take that as a badge. Okay, we're being nice. I'm saying that if you're a Quran onlyist, don't you get treated like a heretic?
That's exactly what I'm telling you. The Muslims are not willing to talk to me. The guy, the Libiano guy, he's already calling me a deviant. So, I mean, I don't really care. I don't give a damn. my loyalty is to God, not to people. I don't take honor from people. I don't care about people. All right. The thing that I'm trying to draw attention is here, is when people have read tradition a lot into the Quran. For example, Ibn Kathir, or Ibn Kathir even talked about the earth being resting on a whale's back. I mean, if this is the go-to guy in Islam, I would rather be a non-Muslim. You know what I mean? I mean, if this is the quality of knowledge that we appeal to, like, what in the world? So, I mean, I don't have allegiance to Ibn Kathir or At-Tabari or what and what not. I did read their works, and some of their commentaries are good. They are, they give you some sort of an insight of how these guys were interpreting the text, the primary text of the Quran. But that's it. I mean, these were individuals who lived in the medieval time period, and they did their best. But today we have the Quran, digital Quran, which is a different take. Digital Quran is
Well,
much more powerful because
Daniel,
you can go and search out the
can I
Quran, and
interject for a
you
second?
can make all those links which previously people were not having the opportunity to do. Right?
Daniel, can
Daniel,
I interject for a second? Because I see a lot of commonality between our views, except our conclusions are different. So like you, right? I also came across the interpretations of Ibn Kathir and At-Tabari and all these other men, and I quickly realized they're just fallible men, right? So like how is it that most of Islam today, realistically, if you look at the world, most of Islam as it's taught and influenced is informed by the writings of so many men that died after the Prophet. That is a fact that you and I agree on. But my conclusion wasn't, therefore, I'll just take the Quran. My next question was, how do I even know that the Quran is any more special than all these other books? Like, what makes it so that Muhammad is the one guy who I should trust and not the guys who wrote about him? And that's the part that I'm very curious about. Why is it that you're still clinging on to the Quran as a special thing when you recognize the human-made component of Islam as a majority Islam today? And where do you think God's plan is in this play where most Muslims got it wrong and God's not doing anything about it?
Okay, let me say this. The Quran is not the only text that's come from God, or Muhammad is not the only guy that's made into a prophet. We have a full-fledged tradition in the line of Isaac. There's numerous prophets. Their prophetic works are also from God. The gospel is from God. But obviously, there has been additions made to the gospel accounts and to the Old Testament accounts, which we can,
But how do you
decipher
know that these writings
what the
are from
text is.
God
Okay.
and the Hadith isn't? Like, isn't a special thing? Like, what
Well,
makes it so that the writings by these men are special and the Hadith isn't?
the thing is the language itself of the Quran. I mean, obviously you are an Arab, you have read into the Quran. The language of the Hadith is nowhere a match to the language of the Quran. At least you should know that difference. If you haven't really figured that difference out, I am actually amazed how you couldn't really
I have, and I
distinguish.
noticed the passive aggressive dig, but I know the difference between the two.
Yeah.
But please continue.
Okay, look, as a Muslim, I grew up in a Sunni background, went to the Sunni madaris, and brought up in a Sunni culture. Okay, but I'm going to tell you this: majority of the Muslims never read the Hadith. I myself never read the Hadith up until I was 21, 22. Never once read the Hadith. We didn't even have the books of Hadith in our house, and this is the common practice. Our family is pretty big. My dad has got 10 brothers. My mom has got 10 siblings. Nobody had the book of Hadith in their house. This is just the status quo. The books of Hadith are in the mosque or in the madrasas. The people, the Islamic scholars who are studying Islam, like traditional Islam, they are the ones who are making reference to it, and they go out into the community and they start preaching. At most, what the Muslims do is they open the Quran.
I don't think you've engaged with what I've asked you, though.
No, what I'm trying to get is to answer your question about how these Muslims have wrong Islam, right? I'm trying to answer that.
I'm not
So
asking how did
Muslims
they
as
get
such
there.
don't have
I'm
a
asking
commitment
you,
to the books of hadith.
why
That's
is
what I'm trying
God
to
not
say.
doing anything about it in your belief system? Why does God know that this would happen and watches as most Muslims are misled by the hadith? How come you're the only one who's right, or one of the few people who figured it out what God really meant?
No, precisely. God has taken decisive action. God has seen this behavior of the Jewish people long time before. That's why when he talked about the Jewish people in the Quran, he always made a reference to the Torah and not to the rabbinical literature. He
We're
always
not
makes
talking
a
about them.
reference
We're
to
talking about Muslims
the
today.
Injil. He
The
always
majority
makes
of
a reference to
Muslims
the
disagree
Injil.
with you.
Hang,
How
hang on,
come
please.
did
Let me
God let that
finish.
happen? Sure, because
Aladdin,
you're
let
going
me
on
finish.
tangents. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
you
I'm not
gotta
going
be
on tangent. Just
try to
directly answering
be
you.
just Daniel, if you don't mind, try as best we can is sharpen up our because here's the thing, I can tell you about my dog that I owned when I was a kid. I can go, but like I'm just saying, let's be as
Sure.
close as we can to what is
Yeah.
being discussed, so we don't, because we have other callers that do want to join too, and I want to be respectful of your time, their time, our time. He's asking a pretty straightforward question, I think, and that is, why doesn't God do something about the fact that most Muslims are misled?
He
Why
has
is it
done
that
it.
what has he
My
done?
answer is he's done it. In chapter 45, God announced it pretty clear. He said, which other hadith, the exact word is hadith, all right, which other hadith would you follow after me and my verses? So God is pretty clear because he has seen what has happened in the tradition of Jewish people. So he says, which other hadith would you follow after me and my verses? Very clear dictation in chapter 45,
But
in the
citing
beginning of
verses
the
isn't
chapter
really
45.
answering the
Very
question.
clear dictation.
You're saying that was God's action, his attempt to tell people don't trust the hadith. Was God unable to do something more effective than that? Because it clearly didn't work, right? If even most
No,
Muslims won't talk to
that's
you.
all God does. God gives you an advice. And those who follow the advice of God become saved. Those who do not follow the advice of God become condemned. It's very simple. God has to be just. This is what he does, historically speaking, with human beings. He only gives them a counsel. And it's up to human beings to follow that counsel or to reject it. He doesn't raise his finger any further than that. Only time he raises his
Even
finger
the
is to
Quran
punish.
mentions Allah doing a lot of things in the physical world. So many things
Yeah,
aside from
he
creation.
does punish when you go rogue, when you become undisciplined.
Aside
He
from
does punish.
punishing, helping, doing miracles, he does so many things, not just
No,
give advice once every 1500 years.
no. At least in the Quran, there is no miracles. The Quran is a book that's free of miracles. Prophet Muhammad is not the prophet who showed miracles to people, so that's very clear.
So in the
So
Quran, when it talks about splitting the ocean, is that not a miracle?
given to Moses, though, not to Prophet Muhammad.
So the Quran does mention miracles, but not for Muhammad.
But those miracles that were given to previous people, previous prophets.
So you believe that God has done miracles. So it's not just
Yeah,
that he gives
previously,
advice.
not to
Yeah.
Muhammad, though.
Why has
Yeah.
he stopped doing miracles? Doing miracles and giving,
Because all those
more help
miracles
than
that he
just advice.
performed,
Yeah.
all those miracles he performed were out of necessity and out of, even Jesus' miracles were definitely to appeal to the Jewish people, but those appeals went unanswered. So there's no point continuing to do miracles. But
So
while
out of
people do not
necessity, he had to save those people by, opening up the ocean. But isn't it
Yeah.
necessary for him to intervene and tell people, listen to someone like Daniel because I said don't read the hadiths? Most Muslims are going to hell if that's the case.
I mean, God is the one who created all people groups. So he has given them the counsel. He has sent many prophets in ancient Israel, and there were false prophets who fought against the true prophets. So all of this dynamic is pretty old and ancient to God. He's seen it already. So the Quran is a preserved book, unlike anything. I mean, you guys know it. People
I
talk
don't
about
think
it.
you're
Even
engaging with the point still. You're just making more claims. Why hasn't
what
Allah
I'm
found
saying,
it
bro,
necessary to
is
split the ocean or do something?
shouldn't the instruction be enough for people? What more do you want from God? Shouldn't the instruction of
Proof,
God be
for
enough for
one,
you?
because how do we even know that this is God saying anything? And two, even well-meaning Muslims think that to understand what is in this text, they have to listen to people who studied that text. How else are they going to understand it?
I mean, there's no problem with that. But there's also people like myself who have studied the text and telling them things, right? So people like
So how do they
me
know
are
that you're
not
not a
new
false
to
prophet?
society. There's
Like
been always people like me.
how come they should listen to you and not to Ibn Kathir, for example?
I mean, for obvious reasons, that Ibn Kathir was talking about the earth being on whale's back. Who wants to believe in that?
So you say something right now that I can say is outrageous, like for example, jinn being in the sky and God targeting them with missiles. Another Muslim can say, I don't want to listen to this guy because it's something so obviously not true. Why is
It's
the
fine.
world on the
People
back
take
of a
time.
whale like outrageous,
People
but
need
jinn
time
not
to
outrageous?
people need time to understand things. The Quran not only talks about jinn being in the space, it also prophesied that even people would go to space in the same chapters, in the same passages.
Let,
It talks about even
let's not get
people
sidetracked by
Real-
yet
real-
another
going into
claim.
space.
Real quick, if I can jump in whenever we see a super chat, just so we don't leave anyone who's sending money to keep the lights on going here. I like what's happening here. Doc Ploromanot does have a question, and you can interject with questions if in the audience. If you're watching from Aladdin's channel or mine or whatever, feel free to do so. If the Bible was corrupt before Muhammad, why does the Quran tell Jews and Christians to judge by the Torah gospel they already have?
This is Islamic dilemma, and I am in touch with James on modern day debates. I want this debate to happen between me and God Logic or Sam Shimon or Mike Jones or one of these guys, David Wood, for example, who invented it.
But
So I
we're
don't want to
here.
give
The
out
question
my.
is here.
I don't
You
want
don't
to
want to
give
give out
out
your strategy?
Don't give
my
away
jab.
too much, but answer.
But wait. Even if you did give out your strategy, what's the worst they can do if it's the truth? Like they can't
Yeah.
undermine
Okay,
it.
look, to be honest with you, if the Bible was corrupt before Muhammad, why does the Quran tell Jews and Christians to judge by the Torah gospel? Okay, look, when the Quran talks about judgment, basically, it's not talking about the doctrinal judgment or theological judgment. It's talking about social affairs where transgressions have happened. Okay, so you judge with the law that the Quran has, you judge with the law the Torah has, you judge with the law the gospel has to these respective people groups. All right, that's what judgment is. It's about public affairs, it's about judiciary, it's about legality in terms of trespassing, justice, fairness. That's what it is all about. It's not about doctrinal language. It's not about theology. So why do people misunderstand this simple rendering of the? I don't get it. And then they make a big fuss
let me
I don't
about
think you answered
it,
still.
Islamic dilemma and things like that.
I don't think
go
you
ahead,
answered.
Aladdin.
No, you still haven't answered the question. You're just saying people misunderstand.
Okay, if you go and study the context of those verses, people had a dispute.
Where do you find the context? Because it's not in the Quran. Where do you get that
It is in the
context?
Quran. It is in the Quran. You have to just see when the Quran talks about fahkum bainahum, that's where the context is. Bainahum is what? When the litigants come to you with a dispute, judge between them is the language of the Quran. Judge between them. Fahkum bainahum. Judge between them is the language of the Quran. So it's not
I
doctrinal
don't
language.
think that's
It's
the
not
only
theological
instance.
language.
There was an instance where Muhammad tells people, and maybe someone can pull up the sorry, not hadith, the verse, the ayah, where he tells people to follow your Torah. So is it just for judgment of like, to solve issues, resolve issues between them, or in general he was giving them advice to follow the Torah?
No, Jewish people must follow the Torah even today in order to get salvation. The Christians have to follow the gospel accounts in order to get salvation. They are not expected to become Muslims, okay? Although if they did, it's good for them, but if they didn't, they still have salvation under the God of Abraham, provided they established the Torah and the gospel. The corruption in the Torah is pretty clear. If you study Jeremiah, he will tell you what that corruption is. The gospel, however, does not contain Christology. It does not. People may say, oh, Gospel of John contains heavy Christology. Apparently, it does not contain any Christology at all, except for a few different passages which can be critiqued. All right. Now, look.
Hold on.
Yeah.
You're in my backyard. Hold on. I gotta ask you, bro. Like now you're talking about New Testament. So we're getting into this. There's so much being thrown up here. Just so I understand, I want to stillman you here. You're saying that they weren't when supposedly you're saying Muhammad, the Quran or whatever is saying that they should judge based upon the Torah and the gospel. Now you're saying this is like legal, like a legal judgment, not judge the material text. You're saying
It's not.
okay. So I have a problem with that, and I'll tell you why I have a problem with that because there are times where in the text God says He gave them laws. And we're talking Old Testament Hebrew Bible text where God gives laws that are wicked, evil, where they sacrifice their children, all sorts of horrific ideas, right? Now, I think this is just a human writing this down, probably explaining why some people in certain cultures were doing these kinds of behaviors or whatever. But like, what laws what are they judging based on the laws? And you keep mentioning the gospel, right? One. And I'm like, are you saying that Muhammad had this one gospel? What is that gospel? Where is that gospel?
I didn't say Muhammad had one gospel. You're the one who's saying that.
Well, you
I never
used
said
singular earlier. You said there was a gospel. So
I said they have to follow the gospel. Okay. Now the gospel accounts. I mean, you are heavily into it. You should understand.
Yes, I do understand.
John's gospel is distinct from the synoptics. It's got different material.
It is.
It's got different material. Okay. Okay. That material was also taught by Christ. Okay. Even though the synoptic gospel writers don't go into it. All right.
So you believe that? Do you believe that because you believe the Quran must be right and it's saying to judge based on the gospel? I don't understand why you would believe that, because I look at the Gospel of John and I see it as the latest fabrication of legend pertaining to Jesus, right? You and I would have a different conclusion about this. Why do you accept the Gospel of John? Why not just say there's a general gospel? I just don't get when you just have the Quran only, you're not like attached to a particular Sunni or Shiite, school that demands you think a certain way about this. Could I convince you that the Gospel of John is loaded with legend of stuff that Jesus never said? Are you open to that being true?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm open to any sort of conversations on this front. But there's one debate that I had with William Ulrich, the butcher. It's on my channel. If you go into debates, I've got some like 20 plus debates, and one of the debates is with William. It's called the Flesh and Blood debate. So it's worth watching. So you can see my take on Gospel of John. All right. Of course, I'm not going into the resurrection narrative. I believe resurrection narrative. Dennis MacDonald has done a reasonable work showing mimesis of how these resurrection narratives have come about in the gospel accounts. But other than that, resurrection narrative is not even gospel, because Jesus is not the one who's teaching it actively. Okay, so I'm not going to be considering post-resurrection narratives as part of Jesus's teachings, because that's just not the case. So whatever the main gospel account is, the core teachings where Jesus was ministering and imparting teaching, that is what I identify as the core gospel. Okay. And that gospel is found in the Gospel of John as well as in the synoptic gospels.
Okay, so Aladdin, I don't want to hog all the space here, but I could go on and on.
I mean, I think the conversation is difficult to take forward because it's hard to get a straight answer about something like, why
no,
is...
please don't accuse me of that, Aladdin. I mean, I'm here to have a very...
It was
okay. Like for example, you said that maybe it was Ibn Kathir who mentioned that the earth is on the back of a whale. Could be another scholar. I confuse them sometimes. And that seems so ludicrous to you, right? Like, obviously we should dismiss that man. We can't really trust that anything he says is close to the divine interpretation that was meant by God. But then something like, there are jinn who are in the sky and somehow they get past God's security or his secure communication with the angels, and then he has to send a piece of rock flying through the sky to hit them with. You don't find that to be ludicrous. So what's your metric for what is ludicrous and what is
we do the same
plausible?
thing today. We do the same thing today. We have missiles to strike down.
Why does God need missiles? But like, why?
Wait a second,
can't
please.
he?
Yeah, let me finish, Aladdin. If you want to interrupt every time,
go ahead.
I can't really speak. So we do have missiles that hit down the satellite communications, right? The satellites that are hovering around the Earth at this point in time. So the asteroids or meteors are missiles. They're basically missiles. They fly around, cruise around, and if the jinn installations are out there in the celestial space, and if the angels use those meteors to shoot down those installations, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what they're doing. All right, they're shooting them down. They're shooting down the jinn installations, special installations.
You look, Daniel. Bro, this sounds crazy to me. I'm being honest. I'm just being honest. This sounds like wells on the back of a planet right now for me in my mind. I mean, I'm not trying to be, I'm being funny while I'm telling you honestly, that sounds like next thing you know, we're going to find like a secret, you know, something on the moon with like taking all the kids that were on the back of the milk cartons, you know, like it really does sound ludicrous to me.
Why would it be surprising to you that we are going into space right now, predicted in the Quran 1400 years ago, and when the Quran described them to us, the Quran says they are ahead of us in terms of technology. They were already in space in 14th century, and the Quran sort of prophesied even we, humankind, would be going into space. All right.
So give me that.
So we
I
are
want
only
that passage.
1400 years old.
I want that passage. I want to read in the Quran. And listen, if you mean by space heaven, well, my goodness, bro. Many people ascended to heaven, and it wasn't just Jewish. There were pagans who were polytheists who ascended to heaven. You're talking about space, actual travel, like technology in actual ships going in outer space. If it's some vague prophecy like that Nostradamus could come up with, or a fortune cookie can say,
right. Go to chapter 55.
Okay. Let's pull it up. Quran 55. What's the specifics?
I'm trying to find here.
I want to look at this, if you don't mind, Aladdin, because I'm curious to know, like, how, you know, when this is a prophecy, often prophecies are very wiggle roomish, you know, and I'm like, it needs to be explicit. This has got to be so impossible. There's no way you could have, you know, this prediction. I think that's important.
Okay. In verses 55. 33, chapter 55 and verse 33.
Okay. Pulling up Quran.com. Surah something popped up just now. Okay. Is it trying to make me? Oh, here we are. Okay. Sharing my screen real quick here. If it'll let me.
You just unshared it.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, assembly of jinn and humans. If you can penetrate beyond the realms of the heavens and the earth, then do so. But you cannot do that without our authority.
Keep on reading. Go to the next verse. Go until 35.
Okay. Continue. Okay. 34. Then which of your Lord's favors will you both deny? Flames of fire and molten copper will be sent against you, and you will not be able to defend one another.
Okay, now here is the thing. The way, I mean, you already get an idea from this. You already get an idea.
Yeah. But I see this in the Bible. I mean, there are texts about who will ascend to heaven other than the Son of Man who came down from heaven. Heaven is outer space, right? And also molten lava being sent down, and copper. There were stones that fall from heaven all throughout the Old Testament. God would send these like little pellets against the enemies of Israel all the time. There were stones with fire and all that. Like, I don't see this as a prophecy about like modern technological space advancement. But look, I'm trying to work with you here. What are your thoughts, Aladdin?
Let me read the Arabic.
I just want to hear real quick. Just allow Aladdin to give his 2 cents, and then we'll hear what your response is, please.
No, I want him to explain what in the Arabic here implies that we will be astronauts.
Okay.
Sure. So it says, Ya ma'ashar al-jinni wal-insi. So it's directly communicating to the people and the jinn. In istata'tum, it says, if you could, in istata'tum is like if you could raise your capability, if you could, invent your capability. In istata'tum is your capacity, your capability. An tanfadu min aqtari samawati wal ard. To go out into the further regions of the earth and the sky, okay, and the skies. All right. So it's very clearly says to go out into expeditions on earth as well as
you keep saying very
skies.
Clearly, and then you say something completely that wasn't there. Where does it clearly say?
I mean, you know Arabic, right, Aladdin?
Yeah.
You know Arabic. What does the text
does
say?
not mean specifically if you increase your scientific knowledge and increase your capabilities. I'm pretty sure if someone can do a search.
What is
if you're capable to, if you want to do a search right now and find another verse, there are other verses that say
capability. All I'm saying is capability. Humans
So
humans
since when
had the
does capability
capability.
explicitly mean scientific discovery and spaceships?
No, I mean, in the 7th century, humans did have capability to traverse the earth. For sure, they did have. But today, we have far greater capability to go into the ends of the earth, like to the Antarctics, and to dug deep tunnels
I
into the
agree with
earth,
you
which
there.
we did not
Yeah,
have before. Okay,
sure.
so we are only advancing, and that's what the Quran says. In istatatum is your capability. As your capability advances, and if you are able to
None of
launch
that is
yourself
written
into the
there.
skies,
That's
I
you
mean,
reading a meaning, like thinking that God's talking to you specifically, telling you a specific meaning that's not there.
This
what
sounds to
what
me,
meaning isn't
Daniel,
there? What meaning
this
isn't there?
sounds to
I'm not
me
getting
like
it.
God, like the story here seems to be implying there are fixed locations. The divine is up in heaven, humans and jinn are not allowed, okay? And that they're not supposed to, ascend. And it seems like you're taking this context and trying to give it a modern scientific kind of lens rather than this may not even be trying to imply what I think you're suggesting. It's trying to put people and jinn in their places, it seems. Kind of like guarding the boundary between the divine realm and the human realm, and that is not supposed to be passed. That would be an easy read that you would find from all sorts of biblical contexts that you can
No,
find.
Derek, please, you got to
God
pay attention. It says, Derek, the text clearly says, "Fanfudhu, go about doing that. La tanfuduna illa bisultan," and you will not do it except God permitting you to do that, right?
Mhm.
So God has to ultimately allow the humankind and the jinn to go into the expeditions in these realms of the earth and the skies.
But Daniel, when you
Okay?
point to a verse and say, clearly God says this, says that, it's only as useful as if you were to use it to make a point, not to use it to demonstrate a fact. Because you still have, like, there's no agreed upon,
Aladdin, I would like
yeah,
you to pay attention to the phraseology min
as hard
aqtari
as it is, I'm trying.
samawati.
Sure,
Min
yeah.
aqtari samawati. What is the meaning of that? Tanfudu min aqtari samawati. It clearly talks about venturing out into the skies.
If
Why
any,
can't you see this?
even if I were to believe it the way that you're implying it, the verse
How
says,
else would you believe it, my dear friend? How else would you believe it?
just hear me out. The verse says you won't be able to do it except with God's permission. This is a claim that, like, again, you haven't demonstrated at all that the people 100 years ago didn't have God's permission, and only in the past 60 years got it, or something like that. Like, I don't remember. No, sorry,
You know
not
what is
60 years,
God's
but
permission? God's permission is this capability that we have got now, we have got with us today, which we did not have 100 years ago, for example. That's what is
all
God's
this
permission.
demonstrates to me is that you're really willing to see meaning where it doesn't exist. The Arabic
Come
of it,
on.
the
I mean,
language of it, does
no.
not say
You're
you
not
will go to
seeing
space
meaning,
someday when I give you permission.
Aladdin, you're not being honest with this phrase. Tanfudhu min aqtari samawati. What is the meaning of this phrase? Tanfudhu min aqtari
Daniel,
samawati.
why
Can
is
you
it
tell me?
that even most Muslims don't agree with your position,
Don't
but you
go,
think that you're the
bro.
only one who
Please
has it
don't
right?
go with most Muslims, bro. That's
No, I'm not
that's
telling
not
you
even
they're
a
right and
thing.
they're wrong. I'm
Non
saying,
sequitur.
how are you so
If most
confident
Muslims went,
to the extent
if
that,
most
like,
Muslims
everyone
went
tells you
somewhere,
they're, yeah,
we are not
go ahead.
supposed to be following them somewhere blindly, right? If
I'm
most
not
people
asking
do
you to follow
something
blindly.
bad,
I'm saying,
you're
where
not
do you get
obliged
the
to do something bad
confidence
as well.
in your interpretation if even the people who studied the religion their entire lives have gone to a different conclusion? And if you believe in Islam, then they are going to have a bad fate in the afterlife. How do you believe in a worldview where you're correct
No,
and
this is
most
not how
people
you
are going
approach
to hell?
knowledge. I mean, this approach to knowledge is fallacious. You don't approach knowledge because most
You
people do
don't
it.
approach knowledge by reading
That's
an
an
old book.
incorrect premise to
You don't
seek
approach
knowledge.
knowledge by finding, like, meanings where they don't exist. Have you
No,
demonstrated that
I mean,
God does
what I'm
allow us
asking to you
to?
is meaning
Yeah.
exists and you are actually turning your blind eye. You tell me what is the meaning of this phrase, tanfudhu min akhtari samawati. Tell me that. Tell me what it
You're
means.
asking me to tell you the intention and the meaning of something that someone wrote 1400 years ago.
Come
I
on,
can tell you all the
you're
interpretations that we have
reluctant
of
to
it.
engage with the text. You're showing me
I
your
am engaging
reluctance
with the
to engage
text.
with the text.
Nowhere does it say that you cannot escape from the earth unless I let you.
No, that's
Like
the verse ending. I'm not even pointing at that. I'm taking you to the middle of the verse where it says,
Mhm.
Tanfudu min aqtari samawati. What is the meaning of this simple phrase? Tanfudu min aqtari samawati. Tell me what is the meaning of this verse.
Let me ask you a very annoying question. When you want to
Look, you're
find
not
out what
answering,
does
bro.
no,
You're
no,
not
because
answering.
you haven't been answering for a while, and I want to answer you. If you want to
No.
understand what does tanfidu min aqtar samawati mean, where would you go get that knowledge, right? We weren't born with the understanding of what that means, or with the understanding of Arabic in your case, I assume. Where would you go to find the meaning of that word?
You go to the dictionary. That's what you do. You
Who
go to the
wrote that
dictionary.
dictionary? Who wrote that dictionary?
Look, back in that day, there was no dictionary. So people understood what that word meant. What tanfudu meant,
Today,
they
I'm talking about
understood it.
you, Daniel. What dictionary do you use? Who wrote
Now
it?
we have the dictionaries, all right? You go to any dictionary, just go to Google and
Who
type the
wrote
word
them?
tanfudu.
So, okay, so who's your source of knowledge on Google? Do you trust? So God
Look,
sent you a message,
bro, we
encoded in a
trust in
language.
humanity. My trust is in humanity.
But you just
That I
said a minute
trust
ago that you
humanity has
don't
done
trust
a
the
decent
majority
job
of Muslims.
in
Which is it?
putting up
Th-
those lexicons. Wait a second, bro.
That's the point
I
that I'm
trust in
trying to
humanity.
make.
Wait a second, brother. We language is not religious per se. Language is what people do. People talk, and
So
people have
you trust
meanings into
humanity.
the words that they
Sure.
talk,
And I'll give you an
right?
example. The meaning of kaukab, right, in Arabic today means a planet, right? Venus is a kaukab. Pluto is, I don't know, depends on who you ask, a planet. But if you look at the meaning of kaukab in Arabic in the Quran, it means celestial body, could mean star, could mean planet, could mean many things. So meaning depends on who's writing the what's the context, what do people think at the time, and who's writing the dictionary. So what dictionary are you consulting is what I want to ask. And how do you know that that dictionary is exactly telling you what God meant to say?
No, look, this is a fallacious question to begin with, to be honest with you. Okay, I do
Why?
refer to Lane's lexicon, Arabic Lane's lexicon when need be, all right? And I also use the Google translator sometimes, all right? So it
Why
doesn't
do you
really
trust the
matter.
why do you
I'm not
trust that
saying God has
translation or the
given
author of
authority to
these
Lane's
books?
lexicon and God has authorized it. I'm not stating that, okay? So this is even irrelevant. This question is even irrelevant, bro. This is not
You're
how you
asking
approach
me what
epistemic
does that word mean? I'm asking you, if I didn't know what it means, how would I find out what it means? And you're saying Google
You
it.
said, I mean, even if you go to Lane's lexicon and look up the word kaukab, he does talk about kaukab as a planetary body. And that's all you need to know. And then when you go
Sure.
to the
So
Quran,
mhm.
you study the Quranic passages and you make the best meaning out of it. So
Well,
the
no,
maximum
okay.
justification
That's great.
is
You
what
said you
will
study it
qualify
and you make the best meaning out of it. You just
Aladdin.
said that.
Aladdin, the maximum justification, the maximal justification that you can provide would be the way to go to understand certain passages.
And I'm
All
asking
right.
you that.
So you have to
You're saying
you have to be
you
able
read
to
it, you
maximally
study it by
justify it.
yourself, you look at a lexicon, the Lane's lexicon, was it? Or whatever. You trust that that man or whoever the authors are did the correct job, and then you make a meaning, is what you said.
Bro, you're actually going on a tangent right now, to be honest with you.
I'm literally repeating your words.
I mean,
Where do you find meaning? And you said you
this is
make
how
it.
humanities study these texts through lexicons in modern day. All right. Back in that day when they were a society, they knew the language. So obviously, if they did not know, they would seek clarification. And people did seek a lot of clarification in the Quran during when it was communicated. And those clarifications are there in the Quran. But people where they haven't really sought a clarification, that means people understood it.
I'm
Okay.
seeking the
That's
clarification
plain and
right now.
simple.
You're telling me to tell you what does that word mean. It's not explained in the Quran. What does this phrase mean? What it is referring to? How do I go about finding out? You're telling me to take your word for it or find a
I'm
meaning,
not
make up
asking
a
you to
meaning.
take my word for it. Just
If
go
I'm
and
Gentlemen, if
learn.
I may, oh, go ahead, Daniel. Finish your sentence. I just want
Just
to take.
learn what tanfudu means. Just learn, and then
So
Where can I
you
go
will
to
know
learn
the meaning
that?
of the
Is what I'm
phrase.
asking you. Where do I go to learn that? I want to learn. Where do I
Wherever,
find
man.
out that
You don't have to go
information?
to a Muslim to do that. You don't have to go to a Muslim.
Where
You
do I
can go
go?
wherever you want
Whoever.
to learn the
Tell
meaning
me.
of that
I
word.
want you to
Or
guide
that
me
word.
to find the meaning of that phrase. How do I get the
Just say,
understanding that
I mean,
you have?
okay, let me help you out. I will just do this, all right? Just bear with me. I will. I
real
mean,
quick,
Derek, can you
I
pull up?
wanted to jump in real quick here and just say,
Sure.
sharing the screen here. I was reading up a little here, And the context before this, you'll see there's judgment, right? This is a sermon toward humans and jinn of a boundary they cannot pass unless God permits them to. The whole point when you lead up to 33, 34, 35 is that humans aren't allowed to pass this. And there is a lot of judgment, but also before that in 55, God is describing like what he rules, like how he's created it. He's the one in control, all of these things. And that humans and jinn, of course, are not to come through unless there was permission, and that he would throw molten copper against them as judgment. If they maybe attempt, I don't know, but this does not sound like a modern scientific spacecraft going out into outer space to me.
Okay,
It doesn't seem that way.
Derek, let me clarify this with another passage in the Quran. Go to chapter 72, please,
But
if you
wait,
can.
before we go to another chapter, like we still haven't
No,
resolved
because
this one.
if you're stuck here and unable to find your way, I want to just
Is it
I
the
help
same
want
you.
your
Arabic
help to
term?
find my way. No, but before we go to the other verse, I need your. I'm not being arrogant here. I'm saying I want you to lead me to the meaning that you found. Where did you find
Okay,
it?
okay. Derek, can you please copy that verse and open Google Translator and translate that verse from Arabic to English, please? Thank you.
So Google Translate is how you found that the meaning has something to do with outer
What's the
space.
trouble? Google is pretty good. Google translators are pretty good
I
these
just want to
days.
confirm your understanding of that verse
No,
comes
my
from Google
understanding
Translate.
comes out of the years of studies. I mean, I've studied the Quran for a long time.
Yeah, when you say I studied the Quran, what is it that you're studying? Other verses, or are you studying this verse over and over?
Not the entirety of the Quran, bro. Not just this particular verse.
So yeah, so what does studying other verses in the Quran, how does that lead you to an explanation of this
It helps you
verse?
to understand the language, bro. That's what it is. You
Okay,
got to
where
understand the
in
language.
other parts of the Quran are these words described or gives you context clues to what this means?
Well, samawat is not just talked here. It's many different places. Samawat is skies. It's pretty clear. Earth is
Sure.
arda is earth. It's pretty clear. All right. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you do get the language spread out in the Quran.
No,
You
no,
study
the part that
Quran.
you
You
asked
learn
me
the
to
language.
clarify, تنفذوا, what was it? تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض
Okay,
إن
now
استطعتم أن
watch what
تنفذوا.
Google says here, bro. Aladdin, pay attention,
Forget
please.
Google for a second. Where do you know what tanfudu means from all your studies? Where do you get that meaning from?
Bro, I mean, I do understand the difficulty that you're stuck in, but you see
I
this.
don't think I'm the one
You see what
struggling
Google says
here.
here. Tanfudu is just passing by, passing from. So it says, if you are able to pass beyond the regions of the heavens and the earth, then pass. I mean, how simpler can it get, man? And yet you are not able to comprehend. I just don't know what's the
Maybe
problem
I'm
with
the
you.
one who's struggling here to understand, right? But I'm asking you a simple question. Where do you get the
I
meaning
mean,
of
if you read a
tanfudu?
book, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Aladdin. If you read a book written by some author and he's used some word, some word that you don't understand, so what is your first response? Wouldn't you go to the dictionary and learn the meaning of that word?
Sure.
That's what I would do.
Okay. Let me clarify what the difference between that situation and this situation is. Then I
Yeah.
don't say the author definitely meant this, and that's a sign that the author spoke to God or is God. I would say, okay, the dictionary says the meaning is this, and it seems to make sense in the context. I'll move on with my life. But you're making a
Okay, good.
definitive claim that this is what you base faith on, that this is proof.
Because we human beings, I mean, I don't want to exclude you. We rely on these resources, lexicons and dictionaries to attain certainty of certain words, their meanings. We rely on them. I mean, you should not be pretending that we don't. We rely on these
I'm not
resources,
pretending we
lexicons and
don't.
dictionaries
We
to
don't
become
rely on it to
certain
make a
of
miracle
the
claim,
meanings of
though.
certain words. I mean, why
We
would you
don't
ignore
rely on
it?
it to make a
I
miracle
don't
claim.
get your point. This is going on a tangent, clearly.
Yeah. So
Okay.
so Aladdin, I'm gonna jump in here. We got a few super chats. I think we need to, Daniel, let's do this again. I think
Sure.
we need to move to our next caller.
Sure.
I want to do this more often. Okay, I really do. And I enjoyed these. And you've been a gentleman.
Mm.
I really appreciate it. And I hope more Muslim callers understand we're not here to try and like hurt people. Okay, we're having discussion. Sure, it is debate, discussion, whatnot, but we're not here to hurt people. And I hope that they come with the same kind of energy that you have. Really appreciate it. But Aladdin, can we wrap things up here and then
Sure,
move to our
I'm good.
next caller? Okay. Daniel,
Will I have the,
love you
will I have the
back.
last word? Will I have the last word?
Yes.
Hey, thank you. Derek, I love you as an individual. You know, I love the work that you do. All right. I want to talk to you about the gospel accounts, not necessarily about the Quran. I want to discuss Gospel of John with you. All right.
Mhm.
And I encourage you to watch this debate on my channel with William Ulrich, the butcher. It's called The Flesh and Blood. Okay. So I want to talk a range of topics with you, and I'm sure I've improved my speaking skills. I'm much better than I was 3 years ago in terms of speaking. So
Okay.
I want to engage with you. All right. So
Okay. We will.
I
We'll make it happen. Yeah.
sorry.
I said we will make it happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Thank
I know
you.
you don't believe, but God bless you. Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All
right. All right. Just
The
want to
next
hit these.
caller. Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry. You go
Don't
for
want
it.
to
I
leave
just wanted
anybody
to
hanging
mention that-
here.
Yeah. Go for it.
Yes, you will. Let's fill them in after that. After we hit this real quick here. Member for 4 months. Thank you so much, Sid Dave. 549. Sorry, it took a while to get to the super chats. Quran does not have anything accurate in it, is what Sid Dave says. Appreciate the comment there. I don't know how accurate that is for sure. Maybe there's some accurate information. Maybe that's just a polemic. No Mo Sleepwalking. Thank you so much for the super chat. He made the interpretation up. I think they're talking about what Daniel was saying pertaining to the passages we were going through. Thank you so much for that. Pat 907 says, boy, oh boy, we don't want the God from the Quran. Thank you so much for the super chat. Why so religious says Ibn Kathir disagrees with the Muslim. Ki Tafsir, I think Daniel doesn't care what Ibn Kathir has to say, or any commentator. And that's the thing about Quranist onlyists is they're I find most of them very nice, to be honest, in typical context. I do think apologetics does happen. And some people said, Derek, you said he was nice, but he's telling lies on the stream. It's like, look, if you think that means someone can't behave in a kind manner or nice, and you think they might be mistaken, you call it lies. Maybe they're mistaken, or maybe they are lying and not realizing it. I don't know. I just try to give people a little bit more grace. That's all. And then Pat again is back. Derek, I wanted to say I love your channel and appreciate you. Pat, thank you so much. Appreciate that support. All right. Apostate, you are the king at this. So what's the deal? What are we doing?
So we're taking the next caller, Mikha'il. I just wanted to say, by the way, I don't think the previous caller was intentionally lying about anything. I think he believes certain things, and I don't want to, dissect that conversation now that he's not here. But
Yeah.
I think he was operating as honestly as he could about his own beliefs. It's just that we were getting stuck sometimes. I'm asking about epistemology, how people know what they believe or how they find the truth. Not even necessarily the specifics of what this verse says or that verse says. It's how do you know what that verse means and why is that a basis for your faith? So I wanted to clarify that for people. Yeah.
Again, Sid Dave, another super chat. My favorite part of the Quran is that Jesus will defeat Gog and Magog, who were originally captured by Alexander the Great. So beautiful and historical. Yeah, I did a video on the Gog and Magog thing. Did you ever see that, by the way?
I don't think I did. I know the story, but I don't think I saw your video on it.
It's a fun legend. I mean, there's so much rich stuff. I actually find that beautiful in the Quran. Now, clearly, I do not buy historically. This is true, but I think it's a fanciful, fun legend that the Quran has in it. Anyway, all right, I'm letting you make the calls here because you know most of the people that you said
I
you know.
The next caller, Mikha'il, I can vouch for them being a real person.
Okay.
So yeah, we can bring him on. They're a Muslim who showed up on my live stream before, and they are questioning their own beliefs sometimes, but he wants to play devil's advocate today. So let's see how that goes.
Cool. Okay, bring him up.
Oh yeah, I got to do that. Let's see.
Good evening.
Mikha'il, are you ready? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm ready. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Nice to meet you both. I'm doing well. Nice to meet the both of you. Mr. Myth Vision, I have not watched that many of your videos, but I have seen some of them. I know especially you've co-opted with a man named Stephen Woodford, Rationality Rules.
Yes.
That video was phenomenal. That's why you've earned a subscribe from me. Mr. Aladdin, Yeah, Mr. Aladdin, I've watched him for a couple of years. He already knows that I adore his content. Not a single video of his has gone by where I have not found myself invigorated with so much happiness and such excitement at his videos. So, Mr. Aladdin, thank you so much. Now,
hey, real
Very
quick, just got to hit the super chat. Anytime we get them, it's not to be rude. It's to show respect to people who are supporting the channel. Aladdin and Derek is, and thank you so much, Amin Ra, is the first time you got together, ? No, we've done a few in the past, but we need to do more. I missed the start of this. I was watching John Cohen, and all of you are great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right. Thank you, Amin.
Now, before I begin with why the strongest arguments for why the Quran is divinely inspired, I just want to ask Mr. Aladdin. So, Mr. Aladdin, you posted something on YouTube. You were doing like this voice message thing where you were replying to your fans. Do you recall?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
I do want to keep it on topic though, because I know that Derek's asked the question and he wants the stream to be about this. So well,
I set up
that later.
I set up guardrails, and this is not to dodge any other things, but like when we do these streams, we come in prepared to keep it very focused because we can go off track, and we kind of did even in the last episode with the last person, Daniel. So if we can keep it, if you have something you can bring, you've waited a long time. I'm not trying to move you off of here.
Yes, of course.
That you think helps prove God by the Quran or something like that. The Quran proves it's from God. Muslims usually defend the Quran, as you saw the last caller. What evidence? What makes you believe that it is from God? Like, we're questioning that it is from God. We think humans wrote this. It's from the human imagination,
Right, I get that. So I've been doing some research, not only from how often the stream has been going, but from, well, obviously all my life practically. Here are the strongest arguments I can present to you as to why the Quran might be divinely inspired. So, Quran chapter 86, verse number 7. Now, this verse, it speaks, I'll read it out for you. يَخْرُجُ مِنْ بَيْنِ الْسُلْبِ وَالتَّرَائِبِ. It means human beings, the sperm is emerging from in between the backbone and ribs. Now, obviously, the main critique of this specific argument in the Quran is that it's scientifically inaccurate. But the reason why the critique is wrong, or at least this argument says the critique is wrong, is because in the way the scripture is supposed to be predicted. Now, the reason why, not the scripture, sorry, the Quran verse is supposed to be predicted. The reason why is because this is a scientific fact that the signal for ejaculation actually occurs practically in between the backbone and ribs, so where the loins are. So that's what the Quran means by emerging. It means like the signal for insemination or ejaculation occurs between the backbone and ribs, which is what the Quran in chapter 87 verse 6 is referring to.
Mikha'il, I hear you, and that could be a debate on like when God said, it emerges or it flows from there. Did he mean the signal to the neurons, or like, but also, I don't know if that's actually where the origin of it is. I would assume it's somewhere near the brain, or the brainstem is where the origin of most signals are. Is that? I'd have to do research, but it's besides the point, because I wouldn't care to go on the offensive and say, well, that is actually proof that the Quran was wrong about this one scientific thing. Let's flip it on its head. What makes you think, or at least what do you think are the strongest arguments for it being a divine book?
Well, yeah, the strongest argument is that so far, with the arguments that I've read, it poses a lot of scientific accuracies in the Quran. Particularly the one scientific accurate thing, which is something I don't really think, which is something I would find it hard to believe for a divinely inspired prophet not to know, is that obviously something that a science back then wouldn't be able to know, which is the semen. Forgive me if that word is inappropriate, but for that to emerge from the backbone and the ribs, I don't really think that's just information that could just be come by, right? Like, if that were the case, then the argument would have to be false, no?
Well, I would have to look into that claim that, now we're talking about the signal, not the actual fluid. Why aren't we talking about where the fluid emerges from, which is from nowhere near where indicated by the Quran? Or, for instance, when the Quran talks about embryology and the steps, it gets that completely wrong. Would that then be evidence that it's not written by God?
No, because you see, Mr. Aladdin, the reason why it's said to be wrong is because we're interpreting it wrong, right? Like if we actually were to go ahead and, just do all of this searching and then find out, these arguments that actually map it out clearly as possible as to why it was written, you can see clearly that, oh, wait, no, this actually makes sense. Like, for example, with previously 86.7, right? Clearly, like, yeah, on its face, it may seem a little bit weird. I mean, of course, you don't ejaculate from your back, but when you actually like think about it more, out of the box, you'll realize, oh wait, this does make sense. I'm sure you guys can see what I'm talking about,
But
right?
doesn't that sound like contorting it to mean something else so that it makes sense?
I mean, doesn't it? It's kind of like me trying to actually see the truth in what it's like, in what it's posing. Like it's very clear. It's why, yeah, it's very clear. Like it's why the Quran is so convincing because of all these brilliant arguments that it makes with regards to these things, right? It has
So
to.
let's take it back like 300 years, right?
Yeah,
Before
yeah, sure, yeah,
MRIs and X-rays and so on.
yeah.
And if I were to show you that verse, would it prove that, or without that verse, how would you know or how would you believe that the Quran is a divine book? You can't
Well,
verify anything against science, at least not most things.
well, back then I wouldn't be able to because I would have nothing to prove it with, nothing to hold it up against scrutiny for, right?
So what made the Quran a true divine book up until the invention of modern science?
I would say possibly the control and the indoctrination of many people into believing it until eventually it was proven.
So how do you know that it was eventually proven rather than eventually people found ways to explain what seems wrong?
Because, like many other Muslims, I'm employing the technique of thinking outside the box to map truth onto the Quran.
But how do we know
So-
that we're not starting with your answer and then working to try to make
I think
that?
that's what he just said. That
Yeah.
he's trying to map the truth onto the Quran.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like another way of wording that is like you start kind of, and I'm not saying you're doing this because you've been actually pretty careful with your language and saying like it might be or could be. These are things that you don't find a lot of apologists who are defending something.
You'll
do.
notice that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you'll notice that with Muslims, right? Muslims have the obligation to not only go with the notion that the Quran is true, but then work backwards. That's why you see all of us, all of Muslims doing the apologetics that they do, because they're working backwards from the claim. I'm simply doing the same thing, and I'm trying to prove and show arguments, even though I'm failing miserably, that the Quran is a divinely inspired book.
Look, just join the dark side at this point, brother. No, you're really nice. By the way, someone said you sound like Darth Vader's little bro, JS.
A lot of people comment on that. The same thing.
No,
but
Are you
let's
using a voice changer, by the way, Mikha'il?
No, it's my real voice. I don't know why people get so surprised by it.
You should narrate. You should narrate.
Thank
But
you.
anyway,
Thank
so all right, what are the criticisms here, Aladdin? What are your biggest
Like,
critiques of what is
Mr. Aladdin, I just want to refresh my perspective so you understand what we're working with. I'm saying the Quran is true, and I'm working backwards to map the truth onto the Quran by making an unfalsifiable claim. Do you see the
Right.
issues with that?
Yeah. So what would help you start from the opposite? So the opposite assertion almost sounds like the unfair assertion to make. The opposite assertion isn't the Quran is intentionally fake and we know who wrote it and so on. The opposite assertion is we have to assume it's man-made like every other book. What would it take you to start from there?
Well, it would have to be basically, it's just a very simple step for me to drop that preconceived notion onto the ground and work from belly up, right? And say, you know what? instead of assuming it's automatically true and trying to critically think and map onto any thinking, I'll actually work from the way up and use my most honest and intellectual critical faculties to attempt to prove or disprove the divine nature of the Quran. Right? That's the most simple way of doing it, even though it's actually easier said than done.
Yeah. So
would you say that there has it?
Sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. No. You want me to go, or you want to go?
You go for it.
I figure it's worth mentioning this because I'm sure our friend knows and has heard it, and the defenses that come up. I know that when I was a Christian, there was no early on. I mean, like when I was more passionate and zealous, like there was no getting me to really do that ground up thing that you just described, which is extremely difficult. It takes so much to honestly do that and to really think that, not just to try and do it as a mental exercise, but to actually like implement that into your methodology on what you do when you approach any text. But like, let's take getting away from the claim that you just made. And if I were approaching, let's say we all approached a book, and a book that had some claims in it, beliefs that we don't already have, we don't already hold to. I don't know, let's say Dionysus or some other god, right? I think you probably watched my interview with Stephen
Woodford. Yeah, Russian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's pretend we're talking about Dionysus. And in that book, there are people who are claiming that Dionysus is, coming up with divine revelation. He's predictive. His father is Zeus. I mean, of course, it's a whole different paradigm than what the Quran has, but let's just pretend you and I were reading this text, and then others were accusing him of learning this information at night. People are dictating this information to him. They're giving him these stories, these materials, right? I'm talking about Dionysus. You know where I'm going with the Quran, okay?
Yeah.
But I'm simply making the point that you and I would not feel any uneasiness. We would not have any hesitation. There'd be no cognitive dissonance. There'd be no defense on going, yeah. He's clearly, where did he get these insights? And we see stories that sound like that. We would both probably sing Kumbaya together and go, yeah, Dionysus, this is fabricated based on, or he learned it. If we don't want to use the term fabrication, he learned it from other humans. Yeah. I'm doing the same thing. And I think Aladdin's doing the same thing when we're reading in the Quran and we're going, ideas of embryology or ideas of cosmology, as our last caller was trying to bring in modern and then work backwards onto the text like you were describing. I'm thinking of the stories. I think mythology and legend, I enjoy it, even though it can be a critique for divine revelation aspects. So anyway, I made that long analogy / thing to make the point.
Yeah.
Why not look at the Quran and say, maybe Muhammad is picking up stories from Jewish rabbis and Christian monks or others that are coming through trade or whatever, and he's learning this information. Why do we just trust that that's not possible?
Yeah, I know why. Exactly.
Why do you think that is?
Brilliant question. Because in Islam, the main thing is you must immediately succumb to all of your critical faculties and just obey what's in front of you. Room for thinking and critical thought is either handled two ways, either completely taken out of the walkway and just thrown and just never properly addressed, or it's just strawmanned, it's abused, and eventually discarded to the masses. So the reason why we can't, Muslims can't approach it that way is because, I guess, fear and a lack of bravery in the sense that they're challenging what they've always been told to face at the front.
You disagree, Aladdin?
I disagree with framing it as a lack of bravery, because that's almost putting the onus on the person, like there's a deficiency in them. I see the world a lot more deterministically, not completely deterministically, but a lot more than most people.
Okay, I feel like sorry. Maybe
and there's no need to apologize. I just wanted to insert that thought here that you're not brave if you're incapable, or if your circumstances and upbringing make it very difficult for you to question. So I don't want someone who's not able to question or to stay in that mindset to think that they're cowards or not brave. But I understand
that comes to my point. Aladdin, what I was saying earlier, and how do I pronounce it? Is it Mikha'il?
It's Mikha'il, yes.
Mikha'il. I that's what I was saying when I said, as a Christian, I really think back. I don't think I couldn't have considered what I know today. I could not at certain points in my life. I think it took personal struggles and other things in my life to even allow me to be willing to somewhat go down this path. I didn't choose this. I really did not choose this. And people don't realize, like, yeah, there were things I was maybe willing to listen to at this moment, but like everything started to lead me down this path where I started to actually see data and I was willing to receive it. So I think if I interpret you in the courage aspect, to line you up with Aladdin and not use it like, oh, you're not somebody who has courage to do this. I get it. I get the struggle of indoctrination, of being taught and told how to do these things. This is taboo. You're not even allowed to do this. You're not really supposed to believe those words that are coming from the opponents in the Quran toward the prophet. And you're doing, like, just the way you're talking, though, it sounds like you've done some work internally to even be willing to question and say, maybe that's the case. I don't know.
I mean, you could say I've been fighting a lot of shayateen, but in all seriousness, when I say lack of bravery, I mean in the sense that, not to say that they're cowards. I understand how that can be easily misinterpreted. I don't mean in the sense that they're cowards or that they have no backbone or anything. I mean in the sense that when I say bravery, I mean the essentially the grit to see all of this. No, you still feel the fear and that hold back from indoctrination and that grip from, your past and the way you've been raised and the child rearing process you've undergone, and think, I'm going to step out of this box, try and see the truth behind all of this, even though I feel very, very scared, feel very, very fearful. So when I say bravery, I don't mean it as something internal. I mean more like whether they make the decision or not. Bravery, I hope you guys understand. Bravery is not about whether or not you, dude. I'm not gonna be able to fix that thing anytime soon. Sorry, guys. But like I was saying, I know it's annoying. I know it's annoying. I've been dealing with that for like a month now. I can't do it.
I heard it. I get complaints whenever that happens. I'm like,
I have to. I'll fix. Yeah.
If I may, Aladdin, I'm going to leave you for a second here. If you want to continue, and then we do have other guests. I just want to be mindful of that. I need to use the restroom real fast. I'll be right back.
No problem, man. Take your time. Sorry. Yeah. Again, I really will get that fixed. I promise you. But
no worries.
Back to what I was saying. Bravery is not about whether or not you feel fear. It's about, even though you feel this fear, you feel this, like hand pulling you towards your indoctrination, you still take it off your back and step out and try and see the world in a different way as much as you can. That's what I believe courage and bravery entail. So I do not mean in the sense that they're cowards. I mean, do they step out of that circle even if they feel really, really, really scared? And that's what I did. And that's what I'm still doing. That's what I'm doing here. And that's what I do every day I live and breathe. Right? So back to the more important topic here. That's why, essentially, to answer, Mr. Myth Vision's question, that's why I believe it's hard for Muslims to work forward from the claim that they don't know whether the Quran is divinely inspired or not. Because, in all seriousness, again, most of them are essentially not stepping out of that box of indoctrination, of fear, of that unfortunate child rearing process they underwent.
Because you said most of them, right? Do you not include yourself or see yourself as part of that group? Do you not struggle with the questioning part? Like, have you reached a conclusion about that?
No. When I say most of them, I mean, because I've taken the decision. They haven't, right? So that's why I don't really consider myself as them anymore, those who are still stuck in that cycle, because I'm slowly stepping out of it. So that's why I'm like making a distance between myself, not to like alienate or to, obviously disparage them, but just in general to make clear distinction that they're still staying in that faith and remaining completely silent while I'm out here asking questions, researching, talking, debating. That's why I'm distancing myself from that. And that's the answer. I hope Mr. Myth Vision heard my answer. It's that
I did.
They simply just don't step out of that circle. Yeah.
Well, just to answer your thing about courage, I think that in this would align with what you're saying, Aladdin. Of course, from a deterministic standpoint, you can see how that can create different kind of ways of, this is just a description. He's trying to say that, look, people are willing to do the hard thing and do those things. He's saying is a commendable thing. And I think that that's important to highlight. I get what you're saying. Like, I feel like it took a lot of courage for me to be willing to challenge and question my own upbringing, my own faith in that sense, and other building blocks in my life, political stuff, social stuff. Like, there's just so many things. But yeah, it sounds like you're on a journey, and we should talk at some point about some of the discoveries I found about the Quran. I mean,
well,
look,
absolutely.
I didn't bring them all up, but like, I'm big into the mythic comparison stuff, and I actually love it. Like, I know that there's a lot of people who just want to bash the Quran. Like, I like finding the human, the myth, the legend that humans are recirculating. I have a different way of approaching it than I think many skeptics do, where they kind of use it as a polemical ha ha ha. Sure, we can do that. We can say this is human, this is man-made, but I actually like human stories. I actually like mythology. I like legend. And so I feel like I'd be like a safer, I'm going to use scare quotes, polemicist, if you're going to call me one. I'm a safer one because I'm not like just antagonistic. Like, we can shoot the shit on some myth and legend and, have a blast. So
absolutely,
maybe a future episode, you come in and we can talk about those things in depth.
You are more than welcome to invite me on any one of your episodes, man. I'm more than welcome. We can set a time and a date whenever you want, wherever you want. But now, to the more important topic at hand, as you previously elucidated. We're proving the Quran is from God. I have more arguments. So let's begin with the second point of view now.
Well, we got to do just one more because we have to take the next caller, but let's just do one. Yeah.
Now, I will point to another one if I can find it. Yes. So this is another Quranic miracle that if I just pull up the verse as to not So, Surah Ad-Dariyat, chapter 51, verse 47. We built the universe with great might, and we are certainly expanding it. Now, I'm sure any
what is
one
it
of
again?
you... Yes, Ad-Dariyat, chapter 51, verse 47. Yeah, so the reason why this is taught out to be as a scientific miracle is because I'm sure you are aware of Edwin Hubble, the man who's responsible for, well, obviously not just him, but other physicists too, who are responsible for essentially making the big discovery that the universe is expanding at a much faster rate. And this, cosmological discovery, literally cosmological, was not proven until the time, or was not even discovered, as far as I'm concerned, even with the Greeks, who managed to find the distance from the Earth to the sun, to the moon, to like an uncertainty error of like 1%. How could it be such that a man 1400 years ago who couldn't read and was an illiterate merchant knows something of this scientific degree? How could this be?
So I'd like to take a shot at this. How do you know that the author meant the Big Bang and the expansion of the universe and not something else?
Well, because the Big Bang is literally an expansion, right? Like it's an implosion technically, but then after
but how do you know that the author meant that? Because the author also talked about all sorts of things like Ya'juj and Ma'juj, for example. And as far as we can tell, if we were to read the words at face value, he meant them to mean like a literal people, right? Like a literal species that exists or existed. So how do you know that the author meant by the expansion is referring to the Big Bang, not the expansion of, say, like, there's room for everybody, or the expansion of, as somebody said, like the firmament of the sky or something?
I mean, I'd say the only answer to that question is that I'm not sure about, Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Allah only knows. Allah is more intelligent than I am. But with regards to this, whole, Quranic miracle, it's obviously a miracle. Like, how could a an illiterate merchant in Saudi Arabia know this scientific fact of such a weighty degree? I mean, obviously it's the Big Bang. What else could it be, right?
But how do you classify this as a scientific fact and other things that seem like statements of fact about the universe as metaphors? How do you know which one's which?
Because the Quran is a true divinely inspired book, right?
Now we're going in a circle.
Yeah. Like that's why, right? Obviously, like you guys have to see what I'm talking about. It's a book of scientific weight, right? It's a truthful, divinely inspired book.
No, and here's the thing though, like when people give a lot of weight to these claims that they say are scientific, it's never been the case that someone opened the Quran and saw, there's a factoid about the world. I'm going to use that to discover and prove a real scientific fact or, develop a theory or a hypothesis. It never happens that way.
Well, don't you think that, in the Islamic Golden Age, because obviously Arabs were the most prominent scientists of their time. Forget about China and ancient Greek, right? Obviously Arabs were the most,
were there a lot of Persians too? Not just Arabs, like the Al-Khawarizmi. Was he an Arab or a Persian? Maybe I'm misremembering this.
Al-Khawarizmi? Where was he from? Also, I know I butchered his name pronunciation. I actually can't.
No.
Where is he from?
That's besides the point.
Oh, he's an Iraqi. Yeah, right. Yeah. Point is obviously that Persian, right? So obviously, like, forget about ancient Chinese people who invented silk and discovered a lot of arithmetic sequences, not arithmetic sequences, but arithmetic techniques. Forget about the ancient Greeks who did a lot of studies on cosmology and discovered the distance of the moon of the Earth to the moon to a 1% error degree, right? Forget about them. Arabs were like the most prominent scientists of their era during the Islamic Golden Age. Don't you think the Quran divinely inspired their scientific work? Like, you can see, this is obviously a book of scientific degree.
Well, historically,
I can tell you're being sarcastic.
Yeah. Of course, historically, that's actually one of the reasons is they were translating the Greek writings, and that led toward the scientific revolution. If the 7th century, with the creation of the Quran, there'd be a case, right? No, it's centuries later that you start to find that. But it's interesting, this passage, right? The way it's read in English, as if like we are expanding it, is like this ongoing expansion of the universe, kind of modern scientific interpretation.
Yeah.
I was just reading like Al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir, Al-Qurtubi, their interpretations, but also I do not know Arabic. I don't pretend to know the Arabic, but I'm going to try, okay, here with my very terrible pronunciations here. This is where the whole thing unravels, right? The key word is musiun. Am I saying that right? Musiun?
Musiun, yeah.
Musiun, which is the active participle of the verb alsa, AWS.
Or ausa, yeah.
Alsa. This verb means to make wide, to make spacious, to be vast, to have power, capacity, abundance. The critical grammatical point, musiun here is not a transitive verb with the heaven as its object. If the verse meant we are expanding it, the Arabic would need a pronoun suffix or a clear direct object referring back to the heaven. The verse says, wa in ina la musiun, and indeed we are musiun. The participle stands alone. It is describing an attribute of God, not an ongoing action performed on the sky. So what does it actually mean? And then the readings, Al-Tabari says, he understood it as we are certainly possessors of power and ability. He connected it to God's capability, not to the sky getting bigger. Ibn Kathir read it as we are able to do this, a statement about God's creative power, referencing the heavens' construction as evidence of might, like God in the Bible constantly, he spreads the earth. Christians turn to the Bible. There's a spot where God spreads the heavens out like a carpet. And they go, oh, see the carpet? Therefore, that means expanding universe. And it's like, no, like they're using language people can understand. God created it. That's the point. He is simply a demiurge. He is someone who is a creator God, and he crafted the universe is the implication. It goes on. There's Al-Qurtubi interpreted musiun as referring to God's capacity and provision, his ability to provide abundantly for creation. And there are other interpreters. But if you're a Quranist only, you're not going to, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not gonna buy what these guys say.
I mean, come on, like, okay, all of those exegesis, all of those exegesis, like, well, forgive me if I butcher the pluralists, but like, it has to be such that God literally meant he was expanding the universe, right? Like, why would it doesn't make sense that since this is divinely inspired book that God would just use some form of metaphoria to allude to something that has no scientific like weight to it. Like, this book is supposed to be like, this book was made as a guidance, as a manual for people to understand the nature of God.
Okay, but
the origin of the
Mikha'il,
universe.
if you look at the next verse, right, the verse right
Yes.
after, it's about وَالْأَرْضَ فَرَشْنَاهَا فَنِعْمَ الْمَهِدُونَ, and the earth we have laid out, how gracious the spreaders are. So, like, one could interpret that to mean that God is spreading the earth, right? How come that would be interpreted metaphorically and not literally?
I mean, I think when God says that, because you know how, because human beings are so astronomically small compared to the very large earth, right? We see the earth as flat, like a flat surface, even though it's a round ball, right? When God says he spreads it out, he means like in the way human beings interpret it and interact with it as a flat surface, he spread it out for them. That's what he means by that.
Shouldn't we just apply that to heaven then in some way? I mean, I think Aladdin's point is stronger.
Wait, what do you mean apply it to heaven? Could you, you mean
well,
like,
you were just describing the earth.
Yeah, so when we're describing the earth in flat ways, we can take it to mean metaphorical things. When we're describing the heavens as expanding, and by the way, as Derek mentioned, it doesn't say وَإِنَّا لَهَا لَمُوسِعُونَ, and we are expanding it. It just says, and we're expanders, essentially. Or
well,
like,
the thing is, it doesn't
expanding entity.
The thing is, it doesn't make sense for the Quran to say the earth is flat, because we know the earth isn't flat. So the only way for the Quran to make sense is if he spread it out for the humans. For them to
you sneaky guy.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
Like, come on, gentlemen! Like, you have to admit, this is like brilliance.
I like you.
Like, so, just hear me out. Hear me out.
You keep working backwards from what we know now, right?
Hear me backwards. Sorry. Hear me for 1 second. Hear me for 1 second. Hear me for 1 second. Imagine, it wouldn't make sense for God to say the earth is flat, because we know the earth is not flat, right? So when he says he's spread it out for the earth, because the human beings are so astronomically small compared to the very weighty earth, he spread it out for this, seemingly flat surface for us. But when we apply this to heaven, he obviously means this in a realistic manner, because the heavens, which we know as the universe, for some reason they're the same thing, are obviously expanding and growing larger and larger, because we know they are, right? That's why.
I know you're being sarcastic, but I want to cut through the sarcasm and ask you, what do you actually believe about this?
Oh no, I think the Quran is a false book by every means.
Oh my!
False. I think, but
you've come around. So did you really call Aladdin back in the day as a believing Muslim, or
I did, and then from there I just left Islam completely.
So you're telling me that realization happened in the past few weeks?
The realization, basically, well, you were the catalyst primarily, but from the thinking and the discussions, I realized that all of this gymnastics that I'm doing, what am I actually doing it for? For what? Like, there's realistically no reason for me to remain in the faith anymore. There's no reason for me to remain in the faith anymore. So, which is why I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna exit myself out, do a whole 360, and just get the hell out of there. The reason why I actually wanted to come on here was because, well, number one, I like discussing, the Quran, and trying, discussing with others, and see, especially because I know, Mr. Mythvision, you are not as well versed in the Quran as people like me and Mr. Apostate Aladdin is. So I thought it would be a great way for me to introduce you to, this, especially because I actually wanted to meet you. I really wanted to meet you. Yeah. I wanted to meet you.
Why didn't you just say so? I'm just kidding. I'm glad you did all this.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to meet
Hold
Mr.
on.
Aladdin.
Are you the? I have to ask. Are you the same guy who's on Deconstruction Zone from time to time?
No, so for some reason, these people
It's your
always,
voice.
yeah, people confuse me for that guy. I have to meet him.
Yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
yeah.
Look,
See,
look.
yeah,
I really hope you. I'm on Discord, by the way, and I'm on
100%,
Facebook. Send me a friend
100%,
request. I'm happy to
100%,
definitely connect with you. Would
100%.
love to, get to hear more from you. We do have other callers, though. I hate to be rude,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
but
So
I'm
yeah,
actually glad you said that. Aladdin, anything you want to say? I didn't even know that, so it's interesting.
yeah,
Me neither. It's very hard to understand what Mikha'il actually means because he's being sarcastic today. But yeah, I was curious to know what
I
he
was
actually
here
believed after
to
all this.
I was
Yeah.
here to play devil's advocate, but I figured I'd
Yeah.
take the piss a little bit just to make things a little bit fun.
That was
I'm
fun.
glad. Yeah. You can send me a friend request on Discord. I'd love to catch up with you and tell you a lot more and discuss a lot more stuff. Just send me your account. I will send you a friend request. We can discuss more from there. Mr. Apostate Aladdin, I just wanted to ask you one quick thing before I get kicked off and for the next caller. I asked you if me and you could do a live stream. Do you think that would be possible? When would you like to do it? Would you like to outline all the details?
I think we should be in touch about that because I have a few live streams already booked
Yeah.
for the next few weeks, and I'd like to discuss with you something before we do that.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a conversation for another
We
day.
have.
So just shoot me an email.
I have your Instagram. I actually did send you a message.
Sure.
You have. Yeah. You
Sure.
should check me out. I have. It's the same name, same profile picture. You should be really easily to find me. Just send me your Discord in the chat. I will add you back, Mr. Myth Vision, and I will head
I
out.
don't know how to send you my personal, but I'll send you my group. And then when you comment in there and say, "Hey, I'm the guy who jumped on the stream," I'll add you. I don't know how
Of
to.
course.
I'm not good with Discord either. So just like I'm not
You should-
an expert on the Quran, you know what I mean?
You could just yeah. You just
So-
okay, perfect. This is brilliant.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. I really appreciated this conversation. Thank you, Mr. Myth Vision, and thank you, Mr. Apostate Aladdin, as always. And yeah, have a brilliant rest of your day, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
You as well. Thank you, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Apostate, we got a super duper chat. I got to get the super duper chats. Amin Ra, back with another super. Thank you so much. I have 2 English Qurans. One is from 1945. In this version, the word expander was translated encompassing power. Is there any English Quran older than the Big Bang Theory that says expander? That's an interesting note.
That is a very interesting note. I hadn't really thought about doing that kind of digging. And I'll tell you why I never really engage too deeply these days with arguments like these. Because when you get caught in a technicality where someone, say, refuses to see that there are other explanations for it and all that, you just waste a lot of time arguing about a specific thing and not the concept itself. So that's why I find it important to get to the root of, so say it was talking about the Big Bang, or say this, say that. Let's explore these possibilities. But that's a very interesting way to go about it. Thank you, Amon Ra, for the suggestion. You could do some digging, people. That's your homework. People watching, here's something for you to do while you're watching or even later. Do some digging, find some old Qurans, tell us what you find.
Yeah, and you kind of have to ask yourself, are the translators maybe influenced by some of this idea?
On
to
Islam,
find
on that website, the website that you're using, Quran.com,
Yes.
some of the English translations are definitely, selective and kind of implying things that aren't necessarily there. So if you select the English translation that you want, the one that I trust the most so far is M. Pickthall. There's Sahih International, but sometimes they insert their own little understandings. But yeah, if you check the 3 dots, next to one verse, for example.
Next to the one verse right here?
Or the settings up there might be up in the top right corner.
This. Okay.
And then translation, the second tab. No, it's
sorry.
top. Yeah, there you go. And then selected translations. And then, yeah, I choose Mikha'il. I find that to be the most reliable so far.
Okay.
The rest, not as much, but it's something to keep in mind.
I
Maybe to
think
compare
having a
them as
few
well.
of them, yeah.
Yeah,
Let's try a
that's
couple of
what you should
them.
do.
What, Sahi International, maybe?
That's one of the most common ones online. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just go with those for now. I mean, we could always do more, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
We it is who make the vast extent, you know. Interesting how that sounds different in English. Language is funny. Okay. So we have another caller here, and I figure just to respect your time, we want to wrap things up by 7 Eastern. I think we have about an hour max before we can do, before we shut down. I could smell the dinner already, so I'm gonna have to microwave it, but my stomach's smelling it. Anyway, I want to respect the people who've waited so long. Did you want to go ahead and pop on our next guest?
Sure. I think in the following order, Anam is our next guest, I believe. If you're ready, we'll put you on screen now. Hey, Anam.
Hey guys, good afternoon. I'm doing pretty good. Nice. I've been watching the last 2 people on. So
hey, your volume is really loud, Anam. I'm not sure if there's a way to just bump it down a little bit.
Just we can change it from our end. I set it to automatically adjust. Yeah, let's.
Oh, okay. Try it now.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Sounds good.
Better, I think.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to. So I'm a believer. So I don't know if that's a good way to start, but I do appreciate atheists or critical thinkers or skeptics, because asking questions is like a good thing. And I feel like that's why people get run out of, the church, so to speak, because just because somebody asked a question, all of a sudden they're a pariah. And I think that's how you mint, non-believers actually. Myself, when I, there's actually a crisis in the Dawa sphere at the moment because of the scientific miracle thing. Because there's a guy, I think it's Ali Dawa. He said, just like me, because I grew up on Ahmadiyyat, and in the 80s, the idea of scientific miracles in the Quran was like, you could have printed a dozen books from a dozen publishers on the subject. And, so me confronting, for example, the last guy, right, who the guy before the last guy, when he's talking about the bone, I recently went into my friend Rob from Sentinel Apologetics. He's a Christian apologist, but Egyptian anatomy, they studied a bull because that was like important for their sacred, things. So a bull's phallus is connected by bone, and that's connected to the backbone. And then therefore, by studying one animal's anatomy, you can kind of figure another animal's anatomy. So it was understood very much like the Greeks of the time, like the Greek embryology. It was understood that like semen came from the backbone because bulls have most animals actually have a bone in their penis. So there is this idea that your penis is connected to your backbone. And that's where you're actually, so your life force, because vitalism is also at play here. Your life force is in your spine. So when a man ejaculates and he has the seed, the life force, of course, would be coming from the spine, much like a bull's. I see that these scientific explanations are not, not winning anymore, right? And there was a whole cottage industry at one point of offering these things.
Right.
So, sorry, please go ahead.
Right. So then the question becomes like, how do you get someone like me or Aladdin who aren't convinced that this is divine, but that humans constructed the Quran? How do you prove that? And someone on Twitter said earlier when they were like, "What? This is the dumbest title of a YouTube video I've ever seen. Muslims prove the Quran is from God," And they said, "It's faith." And I just commented back, "This long? No. One word." I said, "I agree. It's faith." Faith is totally something it's an unfalsifiable belief that they have about the tradition or about this book. And what do you do with that? So then I guess it's kind of like I've asked Muslims to come on to maybe give us evidence, give us an argument on why this is the book from God, right? And if it's just a faith claim, then cool. no foul. I can't, we can't really do anything about that, I guess, unless Aladdin has a personal thought about that. What are your thoughts?
No, I'm actually curious to know from Anam. More importantly than trying to convince us is
Right.
what convinces you, or how do you arrive at your belief that the Quran is a divine book?
Yeah. So short answer, literary excellence. But to go into, for example, the title of your stream today. So I think it is actually a good title because it's a very simple challenge, and it's the one the Quran itself makes. But I recently learned this from a Shia preacher. He's out in London. And so he elaborates this. And I think I knew this intuitively as a Muslim growing up in a Muslim background as well. But so the argument or the claim is this, right? Specifically because of the literary excellence. It's this text, right? Unlike other texts, because, I'm speaking to skeptics here. So you want a concrete answer, right? We don't want, broad, sweeping gestures at meaning. So what this text does, though, is that unlike any other text, arguably, right? And I'm willing to say there are arguments, is that it's not entirely rhyme, but the way it employs rhyme and meaning together. And I'm not saying, is utterly unique. And so that's my summation. But one quick thing, brother Aladdin, right? If I could offer, you asked a really good thing, from the two callers before, the guy, you asked him, like, how do I know this meaning? And, like, instead of looking at it from a dictionary, right? And so something the Quran does, and arguably other great works of the genre, like Moby Dick, the Song of Hiawatha, is that it is when you look, what the Quran does is you can look up the words used elsewhere in the Quran, and you can figure out the definition from itself. So, but I will say this though: any great work of that century, like Moby Dick, you can figure out anything about the 19th century whaling, history of New England, and the vocabulary. Or, for example, the Song of Hiawatha I mentioned. Something modern people are doing is we're losing language for nature. Like, we can't differentiate between like crows and ravens, for example, because we're destroying nature, with our economy. So, but when you read an 18th century poem or a 19th century poem, you'll see a lot more distinctions between herons and warbles. And, we don't, when was the last time you used the word warble? So.
Yeah. I want to start with the things that we do agree on, actually, because I think we agree on a lot, you and I, Anam. And you had mentioned that the linguistic structure of the Quran, the rhyming but not always rhyming, and there's meaning, it is unique. I agree with you. Of the established literary works, especially popular ones, it is unique, right? Is it unique compared to old poetry that was written before or around that time? That people will argue both ways. But if we're talking about today, is that unique? Yeah, it is unique. So my question would be, does the uniqueness of it, does that mean that it is divinely written? Or is there a possibility that it was human written and it is unique, actually, and it's literary work that is amazing compared to a lot of other things that didn't get as popular?
Yeah, I appreciate the way you phrase that. Derek, did you want to add anything?
No, I don't want to interrupt what Aladdin says, because I have my own thing that we can get into after this, because I think it's a good personal example of something that I've come across that I didn't think I would have come across that impressed me. But let's first allow you and Aladdin, and then
So I was taking notes when you and the other two callers are speaking, and it's interesting because sometimes I don't know when to transition into something. But so, not to brag, I have a bachelor's degree in comparative religion, right? Just a humble bachelor's. And one of the great things is, though, we had to read both Freud and Jung, right? So psychologists from the 20th century. And when Jung said, Jung mentions the collective unconscious. And when I read that, right, I'll tell you, just curious, let's say 20-year-old sitting in the class, absorbing all these ideas. I think so when I think we Muslims intuitively, right, we kind of understand, right? We say that he didn't write the book, right? But we also say it's not like God himself came down and gave it to him. So there's this, I think we kind of like, even though we wouldn't say Jungian subconscious, right? But there is this, we ironically, right, even though we kind of believe the book was like downloaded into a person, you know, much like the Matrix, or something. I think we would be more able to cope with this idea. And just to, I mean, so another thing is that we had to also read Eliade and Emil Durkheim. So the study of Aboriginal religion was really interesting from Australia. And they have this thing called an axis mundi, where they can always point to like their hometown, or like it's actually like a rock or something. It's actually a stick maybe, because it's a pole in their hometown. And other indigenous people of the Americas also had it. But it's so interesting to me, you know, so we function that way with Mecca, right? Because like we can point to that city anywhere in the world. Calculations were done, you know, like your direction to pray in is done with the curvature of the earth, because the similar way a plane flies along the arc of the earth, it doesn't just fly like straight down on a map. So you would, where I'm going with this, right, is that because you gave me a very serious thing to, you know, like a very respectful way you answered, you know, I just wanted to what I would say to atheists or skeptics, right? People who would reject the divinity here, is that, you know, Rabbi Wolpe did a really amazing debate with Sam Harris like 12 years ago or 14 years ago. And so he kind of describes, first, I think like Plato has something to do with it. But the idea is that it's very hard for an atheist to like understand words that are coming out of a mystic's mouth, respectfully, right? It's just, so the idea is that like we don't understand what reality is, right? And so, and then another thing about, again, this is the comparative religion degree, right? There's altered states of consciousness that human beings tap into. And then this is where Rabbi Wolpe comes up again. So the goal isn't, okay, so I understand your question, right? Is this a divine book revealed, you know, by an ultimate deity to a mere human? And then this is the eternal
or
law.
specifically, like, I agree with you that it is unique. I agree with you that there aren't other books similar to it right now that are anywhere nearly as popular. But is that, you know, uniqueness and the style of it, is that criteria for divinity?
Yeah. So because you phrased that really well, I would just say divinity in the sense that like there's, okay, like I turned 40 this year, right? So not to, but I think, you know, from a historical point of view, when someone looks at their society and sees all these problems, and somehow their unconscious comes up with these solutions, and when I look at the arc of history, and for example, Christianity, you know, kind of like dominates the Near East, and so this is kind of a pushback by those peoples, you know, from Byzantine or Roman domination. And then the other ideas, though, so many ideas that this one, you know, desert nomad came up with, so like as solutions for his society, which are adopted later. For example, like, you know, sola scriptura is something that Christianity adopts, like, you know, 1500 years after the fact it founded. But like Islam kind of starts with the idea that this book is like sola scriptura, is we don't follow a priest or a hierarchy, we follow the book. And so, I mean, this is me. Okay, so what I'm saying is, though, I'm giving you like from a secular point of view, right? I just see more positives than negatives, you know, when, even though that doesn't go speak to the question of divinity.
You see more positives than negatives in believing that it is divine, or in following it, or both, or
you're asking me if the book is divine. I'm saying if a contemplative person really contemplates on the problems of his or her society, right? I think at some point, like your meditative contemplation can start speaking back to you.
And is that definitive proof of the divine, or is that an expression of the divine that, some people associate with God?
I think, how would you, could you tell me where you're going with that question, kind of? Because it's very interesting, actually.
Sure. So you mentioned that, someone contemplating on the problems of his people for a long time will or could be conversing with the divine in some sense, or having these revelations where the meditation is talking back, as you mentioned. Is that to you proof that there is a one God called Allah speaking back, or is that possibly an expression of what many people all over the world consider to be interacting with another dimension, or with spirituality, or with divinity? Is it as definitive to you, or is it just one of those expressions? Which way do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's accurate what you said. The second half, is like for example, I think so. This is the amazing thing, because when I was a teenager, I was very Salafi or Orthodox, right? I would say that, we have these texts, and the canonical texts are what Islam goes by. But, I eventually, the more I learned about mysticism and Sufism, and we have these ideas that like every person is actually in like, this is the crazy, even heretical, right? The 99 names of God, like we manifest each of these names in different ways as well. So like a king, for example, his majesty, right? So a Jalal, right? So he embodies in a way God's majesty, but like you're not supposed to embody it totally, because only God has the full majesty. So sorry, I don't mean to be long-winded, but what I'm saying is, though, I think Islam is a vehicle, and therefore so would Christianity and Hinduism and Judaism, for human beings to cultivate an inner sense of self that's healthy and not destructive, hopefully.
You're definitely very, very... I like it. Don't get me wrong. We don't draw the same conclusion, but it's much nicer than some of the stuff that, typically is being taught. But sorry, Aladdin.
No, go for it.
Well,
I was just going to say it's very heretical, but
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware of how heretical that is.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, well, I mean, no, I mean, I think it's, I think though, something I like about, even though, Derek, you and Rob don't get along on central apologetics, I think something really amazing about him, unlike other Christian apologists, is that he actually believes like truth is an open-ended system. And this is a philosophy thing. Most religion, people cannot like go here, right? But like, so and you said we might arrive at different conclusions, but so he's actually like, in other words, like, anyway, so I'll pause there.
Yeah. Look, I don't know Rob like that. It's not like I have like a axe to grind. When I see apologetics and I'm thinking to myself, hey, some of these readings I've, encountered were online. That's the other thing too. It's not in person. So there's a little bit of polemics on both ends. And I was, I've bumped heads with some of these guys like Michael Jones, Inspiring Philosophy. We're cool now. That's human. As long as we realize, hey, we got carried away. Let's backpedal a little. Let's see if there's any humanity still here. The other thing I would like to say, Anam, is this, getting away from the more Jungian kind of like universal potential concepts or perceptions of God and how it might be expressed in cultural context like Hinduism or whatever it might be. The other thing I like to do with comparative mythology is also look at historical heuristic historical examples of were other people trying to write this kind of poetry at the time, right? And the one thing I wanted to say before I forget is I love the Odyssey. I never read the Odyssey, didn't know about it growing up. All I knew is that there was a guy named Jesus who died on the cross for my sins, and he was God also, and that was 3 in 1, and they're the same. And it's like, okay, they're the same, but they're different, but they're the same. So I grew up with this. And once I read the Odyssey and actually realized the the poetic nature of the rhythm that it carries in Greek, which I don't know the Greek, but it has a very, very deep poetic nature to it and a very deep story that I have cried literally listening and reading this because I get into the story. I imagine the same could be true for you when you're reading this sacred literature that you think of. That's one thing I want to comment. The other comment I would like to make is that there are historical people. So I was pulling up some of the examples I've heard when I've read some of this. There's a guy who was trying to write poetry because this was a common thing around the time that the Prophet Muhammad was around. Musaylima ibn Habib, 632. He was a rival prophet in Yamama region.
We call
produced
him
his
the liar.
Right? Yes, you call him the liar.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry if I
no worries.
names, any of that stuff, because I'm definitely not.
You said it pretty good.
Yeah. He produced his own revelations and rhymed Saj. Is it Saj? Saj prose, right?
Okay.
The Islamic sources. Yeah. So the Islamic sources preserve fragments, always mockingly. One famous fragment about the frog says, "O frog, daughter of a frog, croak as you will. Your upper half is the water and your lower half is in the mud." Muslim tradition treats this as laughably inferior, but the framing is itself revealing. Musaylima had enough of a following that it took a full military campaign, the Battle of Yama under Abu Bakr, to defeat his movement. Tens of thousands of people found his revelatory prose compelling enough to follow him to war. The tradition needed him to be a joke, so it preserved only what sounded worst and called him Al-Kabhab, the liar, however you pronounce. Yeah. So what I'm saying is like clearly from an Islamic kind of traditional perspective, you look at the false prophets, you look at the liars, and you go, "Ha, they can't compete with us." But if you weren't raised in that tradition, if you did come from their background and you read that and said, "No, my guy's right. It just so happened by mere chance in history that Abu Bakr kicked his ass." You know what I mean? And we're now left with the fragments of that and the remaining propaganda of one side's subjective opinion about this literature versus the other side's. That's kind of where I come at this and think through it and go, I wonder if we had preserved all of the prose that he had produced and we had them side by side, what would we from the outside, not born from the cradle in Islam, but like someone like me who comes along and reads both side by side, what would I think? How would my judgment be, especially when tens of thousands of people thought he was worthy of following? That's kind of what I do. I try to step outside of the box. Don't try to take a position, start with that position, and then try to draw a conclusion. I look at it and go, well, let's lay out both of them and let's see and compare and things like that. But that was just a historical comment that I think is worth making a mention of.
Yeah, for sure. For example, it's easy to point out there were rival claimants to Messiah after Christ in the first century. You could have the Maccabee guy too, or the Bar Kokhba guy. People swore that he was a religious returned figure as well. So, but I think I read once there might have even been like dozens of messianic movements in first century Palestine. It was just
there were.
Yeah.
There's in the commentary of Clement on the book of the Gospel of John, he talks about a guy named Dositheus. And so if you go check that out, it's really interesting. But the Dositheans, which are his followers in the 3rd century, were saying he's still alive and that he never died. He never tasted death. Now, Dositheus lived around the time of Jesus in the 1st century. That's 200 plus years. They're still saying he didn't die. So, you know what I mean? In my mind, I'm like, well, what did they believe? And how does that match? We don't have the writings. None of it's preserved. We only know through the Christian polemicist, philosopher, apologist, if I can call him that, Clement, who, I have my quibs with, but also might contribute some interesting things. He leaves a note in there as a jab toward the Dositheans because in the Gospel of John, some of the doctrines of the Dositheans are compared to Jesus. And so there's still people around in his day that are commenting on that. Real quick, while we got super chats here, I didn't realize Worship in the House left a super chat, I think. Was it a super chat? He said
no,
he was a believer.
He said I was a believer, but didn't clarify what. Okay, that was at me, by the way. Because, I'm kind of open-ended. right? So
got it. Okay. So
Okay.
Worship wanted to ask that, but I want to get these super chats real quick. Late Night Kaju, thank you for the gifted Myth Vision podcast membership. Really appreciate the support. And Chuckles 576, how does Anam feel about, is it Anam?
Yeah.
How do you feel about apostasy laws?
Yeah, no, obviously I'm against them because I think at least 22 countries I might just face a chopping block. But yeah, it's not a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not for, like, you're.
Well, that's, you guys you sniffed out I'm heretical on 1 or 2 points. There's a few other things I'm a notorious heretic about, but I didn't want to make the show about me. So but yeah.
Well,
so
it is. You're the guest.
Yeah,
you're popping on,
So well, then I'll say that because I usually go on Christian apologist channels but I had a religious experience when I was 22, and I believe that Christ revealed himself to me, but I am a Trinitarian Muslim, so I stay within Islam, but I just kind of view it from a more unorthodox paradigm. And yeah, no, but again, I didn't want to start the conversation that way.
I wish you did. I'm just kidding. No, it's fine. I'm kidding. Go ahead, Aladdin. I talked long enough.
I'm always curious. So when I have a conversation with someone like Anam on my channel on live streams like these, there are often people in the comments, especially people who are not familiar with me, who would start asking questions and be like, okay, let's corner him on this or on that, or like he's lying about this. He's a Christian pretending to be a Muslim, or he was a Muslim pretending to be a Christian. I like to believe that the person talking to me is being honest, at least for their own sake. Obviously, if they start saying things that contradict, what they're saying earlier, then I'll be suspicious. But I'd like to believe that you're telling me the truth, Anam. And I'm more curious about how you get to your beliefs than putting you in a box specifically. So yeah, you're aware, you're very, I guess, heretical by the traditional definition of a Muslim. So let's cater the question to you. How do you know that it was Jesus that spoke to you, or that there is basis or validity to the holy texts that are either the Bible or the Quran?
Yeah, let me concede your point. Okay, I'll the point of your question. I'll give you this, right? Since I was 14, I had studied so much on why the Trinity was, incoherent, and I had learned about the New Testament and read so much of the New Testament. And I didn't, I was so annoying about critiquing the New Testament that none of my classmates liked me. I wasn't a very popular kid. I didn't get invited to too many birthday parties. But, the thing is, though, I think that radical change happens at some point, possibly because you hate something, right? Because you have so much energy and fuel bottled up you're weaponized basically against a certain doctrine. That psychologically can be a catalyst for, like, Paul, for example, in the New Testament as well. He's fiercely anti-Christian. And then when you look at it as, wow, he does a sudden, 180, it's actually that kind of person who like, if you hate something that much, if you're obsessed with something that much, you actually love it, in a way, right? So that's my own realization I have.
So quick follow-up. Yeah. So you clearly identify that your focus on critiquing Christianity at the time, given your Islamic context and upbringing, is what got you close to interpreting something that happened as Jesus speaking to you.
Right.
So do you recognize that it was circumstantial in a sense, not an actual communication from Jesus?
Yes, but no, can I tell you, because you guys are very good skeptics and stuff. Did you see the movie Slumdog Millionaire?
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing is, though, the way that movie is framed, right? Forget about Dev Patel and all that. Is that his entire life leads up to each of those questions, right? The $25,000 question is about when his mother was killed in a riot in India. The $50,000 question is about when he got rejected for a job interview. The $75,000 question is, when his dad left him alone at a train station, whatever his life experience was. So something that impossible, right? Like the planets aligning in a way, right? Like, or something like that. That for example, so it's hard to put into words, but yes. So I understand you're saying that me being in a unique circumstance would be the one to realize that, the Trinity is true because Christ, revealed himself to me somehow. But
I don't want you to interpret any of my questions as like a trap or leading or
okay.
something. It's just because you mentioned that you recognize that you hate something for so long, or you obsess over it, you actually kind of love it. You recognize that that relationship you had with Christianity has led you to then like have Christianity on your mind and then eventually view it favorably.
Yeah.
So how do you discern that, how do you separate seeing the events that led to it from the belief that no, actually God did speak to me, and it's not just that he set up my life in that way in order to speak to me, but it actually happened? Like, how do you know the reality of it?
Yeah. And that's why I do, I do try to watch your show, Aladdin, because I do feel like, I have to challenge myself every day. And, thinking skeptically is so important. And like the idea that, that experience is all in my head and I need to move on from it. I do think that maybe, but one of the things that keeps me in though, right, is that, and again, if you watch the debate with Sam Harris and Rabbi Wolpe, there's the guy who's on the National Institute of Health. He talks about how he converted to Christianity, and it's a simple story. Like he saw a waterfall and it was frozen in 3, and that's what led him to become a Christian. And it doesn't make sense to someone who's not having the religious experience. But I think Derek, for example, when he mentioned like he's crying during the Odyssey, I think sometimes when something like it's a subjective thing, and then that's when, but here's the thing, right? Here's the wild thing though. Between subjectivity and objectivity, there's not like a hard and fast line, right? At some point, like the subjective put together is how we figure out, like that's what empiricism is, right? Anyway, so I don't want to wax on too long.
Well, I get it from Lord of the Rings too, you know what I mean? And like, anyway, but go ahead.
I want to push back on one thing. You said that you're thinking, what if it's maybe I should just move on from it and think that it's all in my head and I need to move on. That's not the only other alternative, right? I'm not saying it's either Jesus spoke to you or you need to move on in a dismissive way. There are other options, like you already are kind of halfway there, if not more. Understanding the factors that led to you having that experience and your frame of mind, that in and of itself is a way of moving forward. Putting some significance to it that is metaphysical, that's another way. Or maybe the significance of, what that belief did to you in that stage of your life, that's another way. It's not either call it Jesus or ignore it, you're crazy. That's not what I'm suggesting here. So I'm just very curious always to ask these questions to people who have beliefs, especially the ones that are not very traditional, because the goal is to help you think about how you know things, not to disprove you wrong. So I'm curious if in the future you'll be thinking more about, how do I know that this happened, not just subjectively, but it actually happened, or is it just that it's affecting my life a certain way and it helps me to believe that it happened?
Yeah, for sure. I will take your advice, and I really appreciate the tone of your discussion and your questioning, and you're a really cool guy, actually.
Thanks so much. I think the same of you, and I think there's a lot we have in common, and that's where I like to start.
Nice meeting you, Derek.
Yeah, nice to meet you, and thanks for calling in. I mean, look, I didn't know what to expect. I was bracing for impact today with Aladdin, and then I was like, wow, some of the nicest people popping in here today. So this is really cool. Good to meet you, Anam, and tell Rob I said hey.
Yes. Have a great afternoon.
All right. You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. We are getting close, man. I got 20 minutes, and dude, the food has been cooking. I'm not gonna lie. Like I can smell this food. So
I'll leave it up to you. I'm fine to do one quick last caller. If you want to wrap it up, I'm also fine with that. I'm okay.
Look, I hate to leave people hanging, but I want to do this more. So I don't want to leave people hanging as if we're not going to do this again. I really, really do want to do this again. I feel like we should unpack some of what maybe our discussions have been today, not to, oh, you're not here, you can't defend yourself kind of thing, but like to unpack what we've covered a little and then wrap things up and do this again. I didn't know what to expect with this kind of call. And we were kind of, wondering ourselves, right? Like, how's this going to go? What's up? I want to allow you as a guest joining me. And of course, I hope we do this again in the future. You're a fantastic person to do this with, especially in the ex-Muslim arena. And you're not just creating a war with the callers. I mean, sure, there's going to be tension. It's going to happen. These are identities that people hold, What did you think? What do you think about some of the callers that called in? Some assessments. I'll give my thoughts. And if anyone has any super chats or questions, feel free to send them in and we will address it.
Yeah. Well, I could tell you, I've been doing this for a while. I take breaks sometimes, but taking calls and doing these live streams, I've done that for several years now. And in the beginning, there was almost a bit of disappointment when I would talk to people, like say some of the callers today who would be deemed heretics as Muslims. And I would think to myself, like, why are you wasting my time? Or like, is this a waste of time for the viewers? I just want to talk to the guy who was like the sheikh I was arguing with, Like, that's the point of view that I want to highlight. But in realizing that, so many of those people have beliefs that don't fit in those boxes, I found the process itself to be illuminating. So showing people that when there was someone in the chat, for example, saying, and I don't want to get into the details of it in this live stream, but,
Okay.
all like in Iran, there's this, there's that, and like the Muslims are planning a takeover of the West and all that kind of stuff. And then you have all these callers, right? Who a lot of them are calling us from places in the West, and each of them give us a very different perspective on what they think God is, how they interact with the religion. That doesn't negate that there are harmful things in the books, but it shows you a realistic image of how people deal with spirituality, not just Muslims, but in every religion. So I like that realistic look. And sometimes people are frustrated because they're expecting, let's corner him, let's get him to admit he was wrong. The best thing to do in this conversation is to reiterate what they're saying, make sure you're getting their perspective. And even though I can't really put myself in their shoes, I can't hold the beliefs that they hold, I can try to help them understand where I'm coming from. And I think we've succeeded at doing that today.
I think this was pretty good. I mean, I'm glad it was a successful one because of the current climate in the world right now. I mean, people want to see more fire, they want to see more gasoline added to the fire. And there are some, of course, that do. And then there are others who are more like, man, we need some peace in our lives. And sometimes there's going to be fire. I feel like quoting Ecclesiastes, sometimes there's time to cry. Sometimes there's time to laugh. There's a time for peace. And I think this was in a very powerful, important episode for those who are in the West who do not know or have no Muslim friends or something like that. It's like, look, I'm telling you, be open-minded, because not everyone thinks, the same way. Not everyone is the same way. Even if they have the same beliefs, someone might come in and they might be Sunni or Shia or whatever, and they don't, they're not, it's individuals, right, that make up a lot of things. And so someone might go, oh, all Christians do this. It's like, no, if you talk to many, I have many Christian friends, and yet I'm still critical of Christianity on a regular. So you can do both. I think that there's a chance we could have a pretty successful continuation of doing this with more callers. And I think it's enlightening for many reasons. I mean, sure, we need to have debate, but also there's a time where it's like we can cross that aisle and have the conversation. And by the way, you're really good at not trying to make it so antagonistic. You know what I mean? Like, we could get antagonistic, but you're very understanding of the people, or trying to be understanding of the people. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you know me. If you wanted someone to come here and make things loud, that's not the right person. But I think this is more productive, though it causes less clicks. So everyone hit the like button. If you want this kind of discourse to be more popular, make it more popular. Leave a comment, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. Because without you, we can't do this. So that was my shout out to the audience.
True. There are going to be some wars, okay? Don't get me wrong, in terms of ideology. There are going to be those. That's going to happen. I'm going to have guests on who are a little more antsy, a little more, what's up. But those are fun. As long as we understand at the end of the day, like, listen, let's not make that hate. Okay. Let's just say, I don't agree. Let's disagree. Let's see the flaws in people's arguments or whatever. And we're not trying to like create some type of hatred toward a people on for, that, because at the end of the day, as I said before the stream, Aladdin, a lot of these people were born and raised, or as you just had this guest, they had a religious experience, whatever. You might say that, well, that was a delusion, or because humans have those, or whatever it might be you want to say. Okay. Their identities wrapped up in these things. And I just want to be cautious is all I'm saying on how we do a lot of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope I'm making sense. Yeah. I hope I'm making sense. Anyway, anything from you, man? Any final words from you?
No, just to keep watching, keep engaging with, with an open mind and honest intentions, and try to think the best of other people till they prove otherwise, And yeah, thank you for having me, Derek. Make sure again to like. That's what I always tell people. If you want to see more of this, make it happen. So hit the like button.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. I'm going to go eat. And yeah, I think we need to do this again. And hopefully within the next, I don't know, we'll figure it out. We'll talk.
Yeah. Talk to you later.
Thanks, man. Everyone, have a wonderful day.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.